Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Lawcast. This week, we're finally covering the invasion. We've been talking about doing this forever, and I'm so excited that it's finally here.
Dude, this is literally we have probably spent 3 or 4 hours of our lives just sitting around bullshitting about Invasion and about how ridiculous it is and all the fantasy booking that we want to do to go along with it. And to finally get it committed to an actual audio medium for you guys, God, that's just so nice because we really needed an outlet for this.
That's right. And if we're going to pull this podcast off, we need the old Cewsh. We need the Cewsh for whom Smart Mark tears tasted like sugar. Is the old Cewsh coming out?
I'll just make a significant look at you and then snap a pool cue on a table and walk out.
We'll get to that, but the sequence of segments that lead to the old Stone Cold coming back are some of literally my favorite wrestling moments ever.
Oh God! It was so good.
Yeah. So in the same way this podcast has been years in the making, this show was really years in the making. I mean, to some extent, dream matches are as old as wrestling, but specifically, people had been fantasy booking WWF versus WCW for years. Lots of wrestling magazines would play this up. What are the dream matches? And I can remember as a kid, 6 months into watching wrestling, I was already fantasy booking a WWF versus WCW show. And I'll tell you, it was a hell of a lot better than what we got here.
Oh, I'm not surprised at all. Maybe they actually had stars on it, for one thing.
Yeah. And I think in some sense, there are lots of other problems with the invasion, but one of the problems is I don't think it could ever live up to what people had built up in their mind of what it would be.
Right. I completely agree with that. And I kind of want to just give it to you, we're going to come at this for kind of different perspectives because Steve was actually watching during the Monday Night Wars era. You were fully aware of both promotions. You were even more of a WCW fan, right?
Yeah, I mean, to an extent. I mean, by the time WCW had fallen, of course, I thought it was a joke like everybody else. But at their respective peaks, I maybe leaned a little bit more towards the WCW style and product.
Right. Whereas me, we brought this up a million times before, but I wasn't really watching during the Monday Night Wars. And when I came back in 2000, I was purely a WWF guy. So the invasion is basically a completely different experience for the two of us based on what we understood about the conflict between WCW and WWE. But more importantly, it's important to remember that at that time, as this storyline begins and WCW first starts to come into WWF, it's unbelievably exciting on a week-to-week basis, people interfering, because it really felt like these dream matches were going to start to come true. And I started devouring all of those magazines that you guys have been reading for years. Wait, what? Who's Diamond Dallas Page? Oh my God, this is weird.
Yeah, I mean, I can still remember exactly where I was logging onto the computer, going to WWE.com Friday, March 23rd, 2001, and opening it and seeing the WCW logo on WWF.com and it's saying purchase and realizing, holy shit, the WWF bought WCW. So, I mean, to broad stroke the end of WCW, the company was failing. AOL wanted to get rid of it. Eric Bischoff put together a group of investors who were going to buy the company and reboot it. But that deal was contingent on WCW keeping its TV slots on TNT and TBS. But the Turner executives wanted to get out of the wrestling business. They canceled Nitro and Thunder. And as a result, the deal fell through. WCW's value went from still pretty significant with those TV slots to, in people's mind, almost nothing. The folly of this being, we've seen subsequently just how much value there is to the archival footage, but no one's dreamed up DVDs at this point.
Right. And I got to tell you, we used to do a podcast called So You Think You Can Book. We only did a couple of them, but if I was ever actually going to be on my own podcast and do it, I was going to do what happens if Fusion Media actually gets WCW and where do you go from there? Because that's
the Big Bang.
That's one of the
That's
most
where they were going.
That's one of the most fascinating concepts in wrestling history is, can WCW survive on its own?
Yeah, the idea that they were just going to like shut the company down for 3 months and then hype up like this huge new relaunch, that would have been really interesting. I
Right.
don't know if they could have pulled it off. I don't know how much value there was left in the WCW brand. There's clearly a lot of nostalgia for it now. You see that in the DVD sales, in the sheer number of WCW podcasts there are. I mean, at this point, you've got Shivani, Bischoff, Kevin Sullivan, JJ Dillon, like practically everybody from WCW has a podcast now.
Right.
But at the time, was there value left in the WCW brand? They had run it pretty far into the ground.
Yeah, I'm just.
And they had done so many reboots by that point. I think the thing we've decided is you only get one reboot in wrestling, and they had done about 5.
Yeah, exactly. TNA is also a great model of this. It's like you get one chance to tell your fans, we suck. Let's do it better. Everybody get behind us. We're going to do it right this time. And if you don't do it that time, the fans will never believe you again.
So Vince buys WCW for less than $10 million. It's the deal of the century in retrospect because they've made just an ungodly amount of money selling WCW DVDs. Like there was a point where I swear there was a new WCW DVD coming out every month.
I mean, at what point do you think they made a profit on that? Have they already done it before this show happens?
Possibly. Yeah.
I think with the show, they definitely
this show is an enormous success. We should know, despite the card being absolutely terrible, there's so much equity in this WWF versus WCW idea that this show sells like gangbusters, even though there's nothing on it that anyone actually wants to see.
Oh, yeah. This is the biggest non-WrestleMania show ever, right?
Yep. Never surpassed.
Fuck.
The initial idea is that they are going to run WCW like as a subset of the WWF, but its own company. They want it to have its own house show tour, its own logos and brand, its own television. They tried to find a TV partner for it. The problem they ran into is no one wanted to put wrestling on TV at this point. TNN had the WWF. USA was out of the wrestling business. Paul Heyman tried to get ECW on TV after TNN dropped them, and he didn't succeed. This is sort of an idea based on the wrestling market of 1999 rather than the wrestling market of 2001.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate because one of the big what ifs is like, what if they had a kind of arrangement with their network like they do these days? Like these days, they could have called up USA and been like, hey, we want to put a new show on the air. No stars will be on it, but whatever. And USA would be like, yeah, sure, whatever. It's on at 9:00.
But yeah, it's a totally different TV market now.
Exactly.
Now they pay you to put your product on the air. I mean, they were getting a rights fee at this point, but It was nothing compared to what they're getting now.
It was just so difficult to get anything on the air anywhere. Like it's crazy to think now that they used to have shows on like 5 different networks, not even under the same umbrella company, just because that's wherever you could get it on.
So they actually promoted some WCW house shows for this summer. I don't think any of them actually happened. That would have been another really fascinating thing. Does anybody show up for these shows? Who's actually on them? It just turned out there's no interest in a WCW TV show. The one thing I think they maybe could have gotten like a late night show. That was talked about, putting WCW on at like midnight on Friday or Saturday, and TNN probably would have been cool with that. But at that point, like, you're spending a lot of money to put on a show in a dead time slot. It just doesn't make any sense.
Well, here's kind of the fundamental problem that gets ignored by WWE during this whole process is that WCW is the competition for WWE, and it was genuine competition for a long period of time. However, what you're actually asking people to do is you're asking WWE fans to watch a WCW show as much as they do the product they were already watching, or you're asking WCW fans to come over and watch the other show, even though it'll be totally different. Like, it's the same thing with WWECW. you're not presenting the same product that they liked originally. You're presenting your version of it, which appeals neither to your fans or theirs. So, like, why would that work?
Yeah, I don't think there's any scenario where they pull this off. I think if they actually get on TV, it's not like WCW was popular at the end anyway, but also I think the hardcore, the traditional WCW fans are going to view this as, this is now Northern Vince wrestling. And
Right.
the WWF fans are just going to say, we don't like WCW. Why would I watch that anyway?
Exactly. It's not like it's not like there was a ton of instant nostalgia for WCW. By this point, it had forced millions of people to just stop watching it altogether. It's not like there were a lot of people just waiting around for it to get good again.
So the next idea is, let's turn some of our WWF television into WCW television, and that they would do an Invasion storyline to springboard to WCW taking over either Raw or SmackDown. This falls apart during the course of the storyline, but we'll kind of get to that in a minute. But let's talk about what they actually had. What was WCW at this point? Most of the big stars are under big money guaranteed contracts. They did not buy any of those top contracts. No Hogan, no Goldberg, no Nash, no Sting, no Luger. Also, there's specific issues with different guys here. Like, they could have had Hogan. Hogan was in a lawsuit with WCW at the time, but I don't think they wanted to bring Hogan in quite yet. Goldberg, they could get him, but they'd probably have to pay him $3 or $4 million a year and very limited dates. Because if you know Bill Goldberg, he's perfectly cool sitting at home making $1.5 million a year.
Yeah, it's super debatable as to whether or not he would have come for any amount of money either. Like, he was kind of done with the wrestling business in general.
Yeah. Flair, the frustrating thing with Flair is they ended up buying him out of his contract right as the Invasion was ending.
Yeah.
They just say, we need another general manager. Let's bring Flair in. He would have been helpful while this Invasion was going on.
Yep, he sure would have.
WCW had fired Scott Hall, but they didn't want to bring him in on his own. They ended up bringing him in as part of the NWO package. Nash is under a contract. Steiner's under contract. And, it's not that they can't afford to bring these guys in. It's more like, to get these guys, they have to pay them a lot more guaranteed money than they're willing to part with. And if they do that, they're resetting the market for wrestlers in their company. Like, if they're paying Goldberg $3 or $4 million a year guaranteed, they've got to pay Austin and Rock that too. And Undertaker, Kane, Triple H, everybody else is suddenly worth a lot more than they are right now. Yeah. This is a time where they're still trying not to give out guarantees of over $1 million.
Yeah, and I think it would be fair to say that you'd actually have to pay Austin and Rock significantly more than that, or they would be fucking furious that they were making the same as some guy coming in.
Yeah, and we saw Goldberg had a shitload of heat when he came in a couple of years after this. You can only imagine what it would have been like if they were bringing him in and paying him significantly more than everybody else in the company.
Yeah, at that point, we're not even talking about heat with Austin and Rock, who were pretty much gone by that point. Imagine if he's brought in when Austin and Rock are still actively working and on top, like, this guy's a threat, go fuck yourself.
So I guess the question here is, what do you do? Do you just go on a wild spending spree and bring everybody in? I don't think that would have been a good move, considering how much their business was softening throughout this 2001 period. That's the other backdrop here is, after Austin's heel turn at WrestleMania, their ratings just sink like a stone in the next couple months. Their business dries up fast, and they end up cutting back significantly in the year after this. So the idea that they would instead expand their payroll by millions of dollars at this time does not seem wise.
Well, let me ask you this too. Where's the XFL in this whole thing?
They lost a shitload of money on it.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out like where that is in the timeline.
Oh,
Because
it's this time. That happened. That was early 2001. Like the first XFL seasons just ended at this
so they've
point.
already lost a shitload
Yeah.
of money.
60 or 70 million dollars, I think was the estimate.
So you got to wonder, and they'll say that that didn't come from the same part of
Of
the
course.
company.
There's all these, don't you understand that's how a business works? There's all these different pots of money.
It all comes out of Vince's pocket at the end of the day.
There are no pots of money. It's just money.
Right. And so, like, literally, like, if Vince had $50 million sitting around that he hadn't just spent on a failed, like, football company, maybe he's less gun shy about buying all these guys out. But it is how it is.
And the company's gone public at this point, and they've got to appease investors.
You'd think it'd be such an easier sell to be like, we need to get new talent. We have an opportunity to just bring on all of this. But again, I'm not there. And another part of the problem is a lot of these guys are going to be here by the end of this year. Like the NWO comes in like what, October?
Early 2002, like January, February.
Yeah, but when was the I'm going to inject it with poison? Was that like December?
No, that was right before No Way Out.
Oh, damn! It was that late.
Yeah.
Oh crap! I had my timeline all wrong. But still, like you really get the feeling that if they had done this for WrestleMania instead of doing it here in the summer, it's a whole different thing.
Yeah. So again, to jump ahead a little bit in the timeline, I think what caused them to panic and pull the trigger on this was Triple H's quad injury, because they had this Triple H Austin storyline planned, and I'm sure long term Triple H was going to turn on Austin. But when Triple H blows his quad out, now suddenly they've got no baby faces and no Triple H. They've got Austin and Undertaker and Kane and Benoit and Jericho, and they've just got nobody for Austin to work with who's on his level.
Yeah, that's okay. We could play what could have been literally all day long. We could have another 9-hour podcast just about what could have been if this had happened differently from this time period. But the 2-man power trip may be the single biggest aspect of this that is the what if, because that was probably going to be 6 months to a year of storylines on its own. Like that was the main event for this company.
There's a decent chance WrestleMania 18 was built into a huge Austin Triple H match.
And like, as that could probably be culminating as the invasion is getting going once they have all the people. You don't have to do it right away. You can slow burn it over the course of the year. And indeed, it seems like that's what they wanted to do. And like, that's kind of how it was going, because it was really just Shane McMahon talking about it for the longest time. They didn't really start bringing the actual WCW guys out until Triple H gets hurt. And they're like, oh, fuck, we better hurry this.
A week or two after that, Lance Storm shows up.
Yeah, it was literally just going to be Shane talking about it until there was time. Yeah. And that's the painful thing, is that literally if they had the NWO, if they had Ric Flair, even if they had Scott Steiner, even if we just keep it to the people that we know they got during that time frame, it's such a better invasion.
And the crazy thing is, they don't have to fill that much time, because they only have to get to when Rock comes back,
right?
And then once Rock, then they can do Rock and Austin at SummerSlam, or they've got the Rock. They're good once Rock comes back, and Rock comes back at the end of July, so they have to get through 2 months without Triple H, and instead they say, nope, we're starting the invasion tomorrow.
Yeah. And then in the meantime, they're killing their time with Jericho and Benoit. And then even Benoit gets hurt. And then they panic. And then it's supercharge time.
Yeah.
It literally basically starts the next night.
So I think we agree they should have tried to wait on this. It's hard to pay all these guys to not wrestle, though. I think the idea of trying to run some WCW shows is a decent one, just to, keep the guys in shape, give them something to do. Maybe the shows make money, or at least they break even.
Well, it's a shame, too, that they didn't have any real development process in time during this time, because a lot of these guys were either so young that they still needed development, or could use help getting used to the WWE style, the WWE ring, which is significantly bigger. Like, there's a lot of difference between WCW and WWE in terms of style. That's one of the things that winds up undermining guys like DDP, is that it's so different. The way, just even the way that you bump and feed for baby faces is totally different. And so they wind up thinking that all the WCW guys are shitty workers because they don't know how to do it yet. Like, just having that time to develop them would have been hugely beneficial.
So just to go over who they've got, the contracts they bought with WCW: Booker T, DDP, Buff Bagwell, Lance Storm, Sean O'Hare, Chuck Palumbo, Mike Awesome, Hugh Morris, Stacy Keibler, Tori Wilson, Reno, Johnny the Bull, Mark Jindrak, Mike Sanders, Kwee, Jason Jett, Lash LaRue, Evan Courageous, Shannon Moore, Jamie Noble, Chavo Guerrero, Billy Kidman, Gregory Helms, Brian Adams, Brian Clark. A significant portion of those guys never appeared on WWF TV, or at least never showed up during the invasion.
Oh, yeah. And like, there's a number, like, I'm trying to figure out how many of these people actually had successful WWE careers. And I think it's like 5.
Booker, depends how you feel about like DDP and Storm.
Yeah.
Palumbo stayed around a long time. Stacey Keibler, Tori Wilson, sure.
Say Guerrero, Kidman, Helms for sure.
Yeah. But no, not most of them did not.
No, not at all.
Yeah, and that's not the great. I mean, that's not exactly the roster we're dreaming about when we were talking about WCW Invasion.
Right.
So the final Nitro takes place March 26th, 2001. This is the show with the Vince McMahon simulcast. He's on both Raw and Nitro at the same time. Booker T beats Scott Steiner to win the WCW title. In the main event, Sting beats Ric Flair in a really nice feel-good moment. Then McMahon comes out on Raw to do a promo. They show it on Nitro, where he's like asking the crowd which WCW stars they want to see. He's running down names. You know, they're cheering for some. They're booing. You know, when he says Lex Luger, they boo. But the crowd chants Goldberg during his promo to the point where he actually does say Goldberg. Then he says, no, I'm not bringing in any of them, and he's going to force Ted Turner to come to WrestleMania and sign the contract in front of the world. Then Shane McMahon comes out in a ridiculous turtleneck sweater in Panama City. That's what I can never forget about this clip, is how ridiculous he looks in that sweater.
Also,
and
like, he's literally outside on the beach in Panama in April, and he's wearing a fucking turtleneck. Like, what are you doing, man?
Yeah. Maybe it was an unseasonably cold 71 degrees that night. Shane announces he's actually bought WCW out from under Vince. So, one thing to note, this all happens on the Go Home Raw to WrestleMania 17, which is just fucking insane.
That's madness.
They would just like they couldn't have. I guess WCW was canceled. They couldn't keep it going for another week. But yeah, that this just gets dropped into the Go Home Raw for their biggest pay-per-view of all time.
How do you think the storyline is different if the sale goes through a week later? Is it still Shane? Like, because that feud's over with now.
Probably, because who else is going to be the figurehead?
That's a good point.
And I think they wanted to portray WCW. They want to portray WCW as baby faces because at this point they want to make WCW a brand, and like your brand, it can't be a heel brand. It has to be something people like.
Right.
So WrestleMania 17, Shane beats Vince in the street fight. Before the match, they show some WCW guys in a skybox. I remember marking out like hell for this, but then I'm looking at the box and I'm like, oh, it's like Lance Storm and Sean O'Hare and Mark Jindrak. Who cares?
Yeah, it's nobody cool up there.
Yeah, I'm looking at the box. I'm like, oh, where's Sting? Where's Goldberg? No, none of those guys are here.
If they had just had one big star and then like a bunch of nobodies, if they just had like Goldberg up there and then a bunch of shitheads, wouldn't it have felt a lot more like, oh shit, it's Goldberg in WCW? Like, oh shit, that's a threat.
If you can do Goldberg versus Austin, everything's all right because Goldberg Austin is doing 1,000,000 buys.
Oh God, like this pay-per-view with that match on it is better than WrestleMania.
No, and I wouldn't even have done it on the first one because I think you get a big buy rate from WWF versus WCW no matter what it is, and then you get the giant buy rate for Goldberg and Austin.
Right.
You get 2 big buy rates out of that.
Oh God, it's such a game changer. But I don't even want to think about that because again, I don't really believe that Goldberg was even in play here, even if they had thrown the money at him.
Probably not. Yeah, Goldberg is not a guy who does things for the love of wrestling. Goldberg's a businessman. He's perfect. I mean, he's a businessman. And he also he has other things he'd rather do than wrestle. So he's perfectly content to make a bunch of money, sit at home, hang out with his family, and go to car shows.
Yeah, he only came back because he wanted to work with The Rock because everyone wants to work with The Rock. That's the only way they got him in the door in the first place.
And by then, the Turner checks had stopped coming.
Exactly.
So, I mean, as we mentioned earlier, Triple H tearing his quad on the May 21st Raw kind of changes everything. 1 week later, Lance Storm interferes in a Perry Saturn versus Steve Blackman match, and it's on. Storm does get a giant pop. What do you think of kicking off the biggest storyline in wrestling history with Lance Storm?
Well, I'm going to be honest with you. I kind of like the idea because he's a big player for WCW while at the same time not being the big player. So you don't want to be the first Impact, be the top guy because then you're getting all of the reaction in one segment. Having it be Lance Storm kind of spreads it out, keeps building that anticipation for the big reveal, right? And that's if you have a Goldberg, you save that for later.
Absolutely.
I do think the idea of him interfering in a Perry Saturn versus Steve Blackman match is asinine. Because half the people were probably taking a piss break during that match.
That's the other thing is, I don't remember. Maybe they put that in the 9 p.m. segment or the 10 p.m. segment just to get the big viewership. But it does seem like you would have Storm either interfere in the first match of the night or the last match of the night instead of just some random match.
But how do you not have him be in the main event? Yes,
yeah.
It doesn't even matter what the main event
Austin, Jericho, or whoever.
Yes, just anything, anything significant. Yeah. This just felt like oh shit, that's a really cool moment, but it could have been more.
Yeah. I think DDP is perfect for this role. He's your second biggest guy you've got. You can still hold off on Booker T. DDP shows up and drops somebody with the diamond cutter. But they had other plans for DDP.
Oh, my God. There are some people who reasonably say that the invasion died the second that first video about somebody stalking the Undertaker's wife happened. That's the day it died. And that's a compelling case.
As an aside, do you know who did the voiceovers for those stalker videos?
Oh, God, no, I don't.
Vince.
No!
It's on the McMahon DVD.
Jesus.
It's hilarious.
Jesus Christ, Vince.
Yeah, just the Vince voice, and he's breathing heavy and doing this perv dialogue.
I bet you the entire time, Undertaker's sitting in the booth next to him, just side-eyeing him, he's just been thinking this shit this whole time, haven't you, Vince?
Perving on my wife. The next WCW attack is Hugh Morris hitting Edge with a moonsault. This is when they actually start playing the sirens and putting the WCW logo up on the screen when they do the attacks. So this just makes it feel like a phony wrestling angle to me that you're playing music with it and the graphics and everything. I hate that.
Yeah.
If it's going to be an invasion, the whole point of an invasion is they're not supposed to be here. When Scott Hall invaded WCW, he didn't come out through the entranceway to music.
Right. And there's some parts of this that they're getting right. Every time somebody attacks, the entire roster comes out to chase them.
Yeah, they make it as a huge, JR goes insane. They make it out like it's a gigantic deal.
Yeah, and this is actually, I think, the moment where they decide that maybe Bradshaw has a future, because It's this
Interesting.
storyline where he becomes like the face of the undercard guys who are just like, fuck this. We ain't letting them fuck with our company. And like, he's the face of it. He cuts that amazing promo about how they're not going to invade here. And it's like, whoa, where did that come from?
Yeah, this is when they realize they have something in Bradshaw. They try to give him multiple pushes over the couple of years after this, and none of them work until JBL.
Right. But yeah, there's definitely something here. And I mean, they'll wind up what they're going to do to Jindrak and O'Hare, we'll get to, and I'm going to be pissed off about it. But still, like, there's definitely something cool about the whole WWE roster being like, fuck these guys. They're not coming in here attacking us. It's just that's how it would feel.
While this is all going on, a mystery man is stalking the Undertaker's wife. They're playing the videos of him watching her each week. On the June 18th Raw, the stalker comes out on a motorcycle in a ski mask and a trench coat. He rips off his mask to reveal Diamond Dallas Page. Legit mark out moment here. This pop is enormous. I've watched this clip so many times.
It's one of probably the 10 biggest pops I've ever seen in wrestling.
Yeah.
And it just goes on and on as people are like, oh shit, it's somebody for real. And like, that's what I was talking about with the Lance Storm thing. It's like, you get a big reaction, but that's not the reveal. This is the reveal right here, where they're just like, oh shit, somebody real is here. And like, they have an opportunity at this moment to just completely let the entire stalker thing go and to just be like, DDP was just suckering him in. Now it's time for some real shit. They don't take that.
On King of the Ring that Sunday, Page and Undertaker have a confrontation where Undertaker just kicks the shit out of him and Page like crawls away to the back. And that's pretty much it for DDP in the WWF.
It's one of the biggest burials I've ever seen. And the thing is, like, the way they constructed that storyline, it almost made it so that Undertaker had to do that. Like, it's not like Undertaker can just be like, oh, DDP stalked and tried to molest my wife, so we'll just have a match then. Like, no, Undertaker wouldn't do that. Like, they booked themselves into a hole.
Yeah. In the main event of that show, Steve Austin retains the WWF title in a triple threat match against Chris Jericho and Chris Benoit. Booker T made his first appearance in this match. He put Austin through the announce table. Austin broke his hand in the process. Not the greatest start for Booker T in the WWF.
Also significant about this match is this is the beginning of where they start the, hey, are you going to defect to WCW storyline with Chris Jericho? And they like
which ultimately goes nowhere.
It kind of follows him throughout the summer where it's like, hey, you used to be in WCW and ECW. Are you going to defect? Are you going to defect? When we get to our fantasy booking a little bit later, because I think we're going to probably go through what we think the card should have been, that'll come up more. But like literally they start a storyline built to put Jericho in WCW and they don't follow through with it.
No. So after King of the Ring, we're kind of all in on the Invasion. That becomes the primary storyline in the company. The next night, Raw is in Madison Square Garden. That night, Mike Awesome debuts. He attacks Rhino during his hardcore title match against Test. He pins him to win the hardcore title. Vince says that WCW had raped him by invading the Garden, and then Booker T shows up to hit him with the axe kick to end the show.
Now, that's a little ridiculous on Vince's part, but I do think that there's something to, they should have just had like everybody invade in the Garden, because that's a special place. That's WWE's place.
This would have been perfect to do like the Nexus debut.
Yeah, where they tear the ring down and
they come in through the aisles and they just smash everything.
Yes, and then you get everyone over at the same time instead of one by one.
Yeah, like they beat up the announcers, they tear up the ring, they tear up the announce table. Like it's just pandemonium. They've destroyed the hallowed halls of Madison Square Garden.
Yeah, because that's part of the problem is they never feel like
plant the WCW flag in the middle of the ring.
Oh God, that's so good. And like that would have been a great time to like, I know they don't have him, but like to debut Bischoff or Flair or somebody as the leader. Like
Can you imagine the heat on Bischoff?
Oh, if he stands in the middle of Madison Square Garden.
That smug fucking look on his face.
God damn it.
I mean, just Eric Bischoff was one of the great heel authority figures in wrestling history. He would have added a lot to this storyline. I mean, to me, that is one of the biggest problems with this, is having it be Shane as the leader of WCW and Stephanie especially as the leader of ECW.
Yeah, even when you add Paul Heyman into that,
he's just so overshadowed.
And there's just some element where you just don't believe that he has power like that. Whereas with Bischoff, you would be like, oh, he's a snake oil salesman. He sold Shane on this vision, but it's really him. Like, you would believe that because he actually competed with Vince for real.
Yeah. And I would have just had Bischoff lead the WCW guys to turn on Shane and get him out of the picture.
Absolutely. Then you have all the McMahons on one side and WCW guys. See, that's the thing, is you have to expunge WWE from WCW to make them feel like separate entities. Otherwise, it just feels like two sections of WWE fighting themselves. Like Raw and SmackDown are today. Like, you'll never really feel like it's a competition, because at the end of the day, it's just Vince fighting himself with action figures in his room. You know what I mean? It's not real. It can't feel real.
That Thursday on SmackDown, Linda announced that there would be WCW matches on Raw and SmackDown starting on Monday. So that Monday in Tacoma, Washington, is the infamous Booker T versus Buff Bagwell match that main evented Raw.
Oh my God.
This is a legendarily terrible match, and it is every bit as bad as its reputation.
Guys, you need to go to YouTube and watch this match immediately, because it's very possible that a lot of you didn't see it, or a lot of you have heard about how bad it is, but kind of don't really remember exactly. This is one of the worst segments in wrestling history. Like, if this had been good at all, the entire direction of the storyline would be completely different. Just utterly, utterly different. But it's terrible in every way it can be. The match, god awful. Buff Bagwell is a disaster. Booker T is completely off his game. The crowd does not give a fuck. The announcing is terrible. And then at the end, WWE guys come out and just jump them and beat the shit out of all of them. Like, it's a worthless, painful segment that murdered WCW.
This is just so fascinatingly weird. Like, they say, okay, the WWF portion of the show is over. JR and Heyman, literally sign off, say, okay, it's WCW now. And now, Scott Hudson and Arn Anderson, which, wow, what a commentary team that is.
Right.
Arn Anderson may have been a great promo, but he was a terrible, terrible commentator. Going back to our thing we always talk about how you never know who's going to be a good commentator. Arn Anderson was not.
I don't even know who they could have gotten, though, because they didn't really have access to a better announcer than Scott Hudson for this.
They could have gotten Bobby Heenan.
Oh, man, that would have been so crazy if they had gotten Heenan to do this.
That's the weirdest thing, is other than the Battle Royal, or the gimmick Battle Royal, they never used Heenan again.
Oh, they even could have gotten Dusty. What was Dusty doing?
Nothing. Indies, MLW at this time, I think.
I mean, it's just one of those things where, people who were synonymous with WCW and who are on good terms at WWE were not used.
And Gene Okerlund's a bad commentator too, but they could have at least had him do the backstage interviews.
Right.
They put the WCW logo on the screen. They have WCW ring apron. They bring out a WCW referee. They don't do anything to promote this match or explain who the guys are or why this match is important. The build to this is a 30-second Buff Bagwell backstage promo where he talks to Shane and just Shane wishes him good luck, and Buff says, I don't need luck because I'm Buff and I'm the stuff. And after this match, he was fired.
It's very odd, because really no other time that Vince has ever gotten a hold of talent from another company has he ever just been like, oh, you guys know who these guys are. We'll just run with them as if they're just straight off the street. This is great. They'll never, ever do this before or since, where they're just like, hey, you guys know who they are. We're not going to hype them one bit.
Yeah, it's self-destructive. It almost feels like it's meant to fail.
Yeah, and again,
maybe it's the trolling to turn WCW heel, because they do turn heel right after this.
and again, from my perspective, I was vaguely aware of who Diamond Dallas Page was just from the wrestling magazines. I didn't really know who Lance Storm was. I guess I barely knew who Booker T was. But like this happened on television, and I was excited. I remember like being like, man, I'm gonna get to see what WCW's like. Let me get a look at this. And it was trash. And in my head, I was just like, well, I guess they're trash.
The crowd turned on this immediately. They're booing, they're chanting boring. Like 2 minutes into this match, Booker does a sidekick and just like falls flat on his ass. Like, when have you ever seen Booker T do that?
I mean,
they're just both totally off their game.
What should they have done? Like, what should have been the first WCW match if they're doing this?
I don't think I would have done WCW matches. I would have not done WCW matches until we actually had the pay-per-view.
Right.
Then I would have done WWF versus WCW matches, but it just feels so weird and artificial to just have WCW matches on the show.
I agree. It's just bizarre.
So, the match is horrible. It tanks in the ratings. The crowd turned on it. The commentary's awful. The wrestling was terrible. Everything about this was horrible. This, I think, killed the idea of giving WCW their own brand. I think from this point on, WCW is just going to be a faction.
Yeah, and not a particularly well-organized one either.
On SmackDown, that 4th of July, a few days later, DDP and Booker have a WCW title match in the main event. The Undertaker comes after DDP. DDP takes off. He lures Undertaker into the parking lot. The WCW roster jumps Taker, beats him up. Shane and Booker T try to intervene and stop the attack, and they get beaten up by the WCW guys. So we've got some intrigue at this point. What's going on here? I should note, at this point into July, it's still being reported that they're going to have WCW get Raw, and SmackDown will be the WWF show. The storyline explanation here is that Vince and Linda are getting a divorce, and this has been played out over several months on TV. They're going to, Linda is going to get 50% of the company in the divorce, so she is going to give her 50% of the company to Shane to be WCW. And then they'll have a draft with some of the WWF guys going to WCW. This is the genesis of the roster split that we would instead get later in 2002.
Yeah, it's fascinating that that's the part that still lives on to this day, was that Vince gets the idea for the brand split here. And it's an idea that he's never fallen out of love with. He stopped doing it briefly because it was a failure, but he went right back to it as soon as it was reasonable. It's clear that this is something that Vince has a lot of faith in.
Well, and if it's WCW, it would feel a lot more real. I still don't. I don't know that it would have worked, but at least it would have. You could have made it feel like a different company in a way that you can never make Raw and SmackDown feel like different companies.
Yeah, but you just remember how fascinating and awesome that first draft was. If it's WCW and WCW, that's so much better. It's so much bigger. That's a huge rating on Raw, I feel like.
Yeah. So Raw on July 9th is one of the greatest and craziest episodes of Raw ever. Do you remember watching this one live?
I do.
This was insane.
This was awesome because they do two things. They give you a swerve earlier in the night that you feel is the swerve for the show, and then they give you the real one, and I love that.
Yeah. I had some friends over that night. They slept over. We had some sodas. It was wild. So first, in the opening match, DDP is set to face Shane McMahon in a street fight. Undertaker instead comes out, and he wants the match against DDP, but Shane attacks Undertaker. So we've reestablished Shane. We've now established Shane as a heel. WCW are heels. This was all just a swerve.
Now, do you think that they were positioning Shane and Booker that way because if WCW had been its own show, Booker would have been a top babyface on it?
Yeah, I think they rewrote everything after the match, and the match the previous week bombed. I think that was when everything changed.
Yeah, because Booker had been doing mostly like babyface kind of stuff up until that, like getting his hands on Vince, beating
Beating
up
up
Steve.
Austin, yeah. Like the WWF guys were, showing respect to him. Like there was this one backstage segment where like he walks in and he walks past all the WWF guys, and the APA are last, and they're just kind of like, "Yeah, you're all right, man."
Which
So
is kind of
yeah.
insane. But yeah, it makes sense that there would be like one guy you can actually respect on that side, and he's their top guy.
Later in the night, Kane and Chris Jericho are facing Lance Storm and Mike Awesome. I hate that we're just having like WWF versus WCW matches on TV at this point. That feels too soon.
No, it's fucking ridiculous. The first time they touch should be at this show. Like, it doesn't make any sense to have the show otherwise.
During this match, Rob Van Dam and Tommy Dreamer jump the guardrail and interfere in the match. I lost my shit when this happened. I had never considered that there was going to be ECW, and my initial response is like, "Oh, they're just with they're with WCW. Okay,
Right.
Okay, cool."
And then there's the moment, and this is let me paint you a word picture. There's this incredible moment where all the WWE guys are in the ring and they're squaring off, and it's just Rob Van Dam and Tommy Dreamer. And there's this moment in the back of your head where like, is RVD and Tommy Dreamer going to fight like 10 WWE guys? This is fucking crazy. And then the WWE guys who had been in ECW turn around.
Yeah.
And that's an electric moment.
Yeah, you realize you look at it and you're like, wait, it's the Dudleys, Raven, Taz, Rhino, Just Incredible. Oh shit.
Yeah, because they had been so entrenched in WWE to that point that you didn't even think of them like that until the moment that they turn around and you're like, wait. Oh shit, it's just Kane and Jericho. And poor Jericho doesn't get to turn around even though he was an ECW guy.
Yeah. So the ECW guys just lay waste to the two WWF guys. Heyman comes off the commentary table, proclaims, ECW is alive and they've invaded the WWF. And this is just an absolute shot in the arm for this storyline.
I kind of wish, and again, this is just sort of a fantasy booking thing. And
what if they just killed WCW here?
Yeah, or like you can absolutely say that ECW was way more compelling in this whole thing than anything WCW does. I mean, if it is just ECW versus WWE, it's probably a better invasion. But even more so, like, what if ECW had not taken a side? Because that better represents what actually happened in the Monday Night Wars, right?
It's just like a three-way feud.
Yeah, ECW is just a crazy wild card floating out there attacking everybody. Like that's, I don't know, maybe that's just me.
So yeah, we've got ECW, and this is 10 o'clock p.m. This has happened, so we've still got an hour left in the show.
That's such an iconic moment, and then you realize that there's still an hour to go.
Vince and Shane, powwow backstage, and they agree to do a 10-on-10 tag match, pitting the 10 ECW guys against 5 WWF wrestlers and 5 WCW wrestlers. So in the main event, we get the APA, Big Show, Billy Gunn, and Hardcore Holly, along with Chuck Palumbo, Sean O'Hare, Mark Jindrak, Sean Stasiak, and Canyon. In a hilarious moment, Lillian Garcia tries to announce the WCW guys and has no fucking clue who they are. She just starts much like Sean Palumbo, just cuts off, just stops bothering to try to announce them.
Oh, poor Lillian.
Yeah. JR on commentary. Lillian seemingly not familiar with the WCW stars.
But I mean, that almost kind of makes it more realistic too. It's like, why the fuck would she know who these jabronis are?
So then the ECW wrestlers make their iconic entrance through the crowd. This was badass.
Yeah, it was.
Heyman, like with his tie undone, leading them down the aisle to war. This is great.
And it builds on something that already existed within WWE. Like they had done this in 97, like 96. Like this existed already.
And they would do this again in 2005, and it was awesome that time too.
It's always believable that this like rogue gorilla element would like come out of the crowd and like attack motherfuckers and like take them out because they're hardcore. Not because they're more talented, just because they're crazier. That's always going to be compelling.
And like
then had it
who have been used in like Taz, who's just been abused in the WWF, suddenly feels legit again.
And that's why they're so much a more powerful stable than WCW guys are, because WCW doesn't have an identity.
No.
It really doesn't, especially not by this point. ACW does. It has the identity, really.
Yeah. And ECW's hot.
Yes.
The ECW chants were massive. I don't remember where this show happened, but it wasn't Philadelphia. Like, it was just somewhere, and ECW was over.
Oh, God, you couldn't have done it in Philadelphia. Like, it would have been deafening.
Yeah. So the WCW guys and the WWF guys get into a fight during the ECW entrance, and then the WCW guys turn on the WWF guys. They join with ECW, beat the hell out of the WWF. Heyman and Shane embrace, and then Heyman announces the new owner of ECW is Stephanie McMahon. And all the air comes out of this storyline.
I understand how Vince gets to this being a good idea.
Because everything always has to be about the McMahons.
Well, it's already about him versus Shane, right?
Yes.
So, like, add Stephanie, so then it's the kids versus the dad.
Yeah.
I kind of get how he got there, especially since all their storylines from around this time were revolved around this. But it's a disaster. Like, you can almost convince yourself what this should have been is Bischoff and Heyman joining forces, which would have been ridiculous.
Ugh.
That would have been wild.
The thought of it is just, the heat that would have put on Paul Heyman to embrace Eric Bischoff.
That's true. That's very
Bischoff, Satan himself to ECW fans.
That's probably the only way you could have turned ECW heel at this point.
Yeah.
But like, just the way that this happens, it becomes all about Vince, Shane, and Stephanie. And the wrestlers are just standing in the ring like, hey, remember us? And that's going to be so much of what this storyline is a bunch of guys standing around, like, just nothing to do, not important, just there.
And just to say one more time, all of that happened on one episode of Raw.
Yeah.
That was like 2 to 3 months of storylines that they packed into one show.
Like, the Attitude Era had a lot on each individual show. And I know people complain about how little there is on each show now in comparison. And it's true. There's a lot less. But this, like, 1 year, 2001, they were doing, like, 20 major things per segment. Like, it was crazy.
It's just what they had trained people to expect.
Yeah. And, like, I just remember, like, you couldn't take your eyes off of it. You couldn't take a bathroom break. You were going to miss a debut or something.
There's a complication to all of this. The WWF didn't own any of the ECW intellectual property. Paul Heyman didn't own it. It was owned by a federal bankruptcy court in New York because ECW had declared bankruptcy.
Man, that's so awkward. I wonder, like, because ostensibly, like, Paul sold the company to WWE, and I wonder how much money he got for it. And I wonder if WWE asked for it back.
Well, yeah, I suspect Heyman was playing a long game here.
Right.
He's been pushing for ECW since he came in. He has presumably been portraying it as if he still owns all the ECW stuff. Do you know who some of the largest creditors to ECW were at the time?
No.
They were Paul Heyman and his parents.
That makes sense.
Company owed Heyman a couple $100,000. They owed his parents about $4 million. So they all got a handsome check out of this, I'm sure, when the WWF just had to buy the ECW rights from the bankruptcy court, which were worth dramatically more after they had put it on TV and started promoting a pay-per-view around it.
Right. Now, in fairness, Heyman might have intended to settle that before he sold it to Vince, and then had to do that much quicker than they intended once this all gets rolling, you know?
Yeah, there was definitely, I don't think there was a plan to bring in ECW until like probably 2 or 3 days before this.
But just like all of this crazy shit that they're doing to like emergency book this invasion that they're doing. Like they're like tearing through years of storylines here. Just like ripping straight through them.
Let's get to another one. With this invasion going all out, it's clear to Vince he needs all hands on deck. He knows who he needs. He needs the old Stone Cold. Not the Stone Cold who strums on a guitar and sings songs. Not the Stone Cold who gives him hugs as much as he might appreciate them. He needs the Stone Cold who doesn't take shit from anybody. He needs the Stone Cold who would whip Vince's ass any damn time he well pleased.
And Austin refuses and walks away.
Yes. This segment is hilarious. So Vince is like, come on, you want to see Steve Austin whip my ass? Give me a hell yeah.
And Austin's like, nope, I don't want to whip that ass. And McMahon's like, come on, whip my ass, please.
Yeah. As he's walking away, he's like, no, Austin, come back. Give me a stunner. No, Shane.
And that
Not
would
Shane McMahon, Shane the Western.
It would be so fucking amazing for that just to be a long con by Austin to just fuck with him mentally. Just feel like, oh, you finally asked for it. Here you go.
Yeah.
I've been waiting.
The old Stone Cold would have had a video from months ago play on the Tron that's like, your pager's going to go off and it's going to read 316 and I'm going to own your ass.
Yep. But the entire purpose of this Austin character as they've constructed it is that he exists solely for validation from people. Like he didn't feel like people were appreciating him enough. He was terrified and paranoid that someone was going to take his spot, that he wasn't going to be the top guy anymore. So all he wants is to feel like the top guy. And inadvertently, what Vince is doing is telling him, I don't think you're the top guy anymore. You need to change. And he's pissing Steve off.
Yeah. So Raw on July 16th is the go-home show to Invasion. The whole show is built around Austin's internal conflict. He's sitting at the Friendly Tap, the bar in Providence, owned by Tim White. He's just sitting by himself, brooding, drinking all night. Like Vince comes to talk to him, and he doesn't say a word to Vince, won't even look at him. He's drinking beers all night. Back at the show, things are going bad for the WWF. The Alliance is kicking their ass. You know, we get these big rousing speeches. You know, Shane, Heyman, Stephanie, they're firing up the Alliance. Then we go to the WWF locker room. We get a Vince speech. We get Bradshaw and Farouk saying, you know, time to draw the line in the sand. This is our house. You know, Taker says we're going to find out who's the phony tough and who's the crazy brave. Finally, they wheel in Freddie Blassie. He, you know, says, you know, there comes a time in every man's life when he has to stand up for himself. He literally stands up out of his wheelchair, like, tells all the wrestlers, you know, stand up, stand up. They all stand up, and he's like, let's go. You know, it's our time now. Just segment gives me chills.
Literally, this is one of the best episodes of Raw in history.
Yeah.
Like,
here.
Yeah, because they spread this out over the course of the whole show. And, like, it's literally just a bunch of people sitting in like, the cafeteria while guys who you understand as a fan, even if you're not a smart fan, you understand that The Undertaker and the APA and Freddie Blassie, they're the heart of WWE. Like, these are the guys who would be talking backstage. This is who you're going to listen to. And, like, they're all cutting seriously impassioned promos. And, like, for their credit, the guys who are in the locker room, too, are selling it like this is a real thing. Like, they're like, fuck yeah, fuck those guys. We're going to kill them, yeah. Like, everybody's getting real charged up. While meanwhile, Austin is just looking more and more anguished. And he's just staring at the TV while these promos are going on. And, like, you can't get a read on how he's feeling, but you know he's not happy.
Yeah, they show Austin. He's, you know, just kind of brooding. He's shooting pool. And then he kind of like he takes one ball and kind of runs it into another, and he runs into another. He takes his pool cue, smashes it on the side of the table, and he walks out of the bar, and shit's about to get real.
And the very important part about this is we don't know what Austin's going to do. Like I believe on commentary either this week or the week before, like somebody like speculates like, is Austin going to join them? Is Austin like they bring it up? Like Austin doesn't seem to want to be part of WWF anymore. Like what's he going to do? There's real intrigue as to whether or not he's actually going to show up, if he's going to help, if he does, if he's going to be like Austin. And then he shows up.
Yeah. Back at the arena, a riot breaks out between the WWF and the Alliance. Like, this is the kind of shit I love in wrestling. You've got 50 people fighting. You got people fighting in the ring, on the floor, in the crowd, backstage, in the parking lot. It's just absolute chaos. The Alliance is winning. The WWF is outnumbered. They are getting their asses kicked. And then Austin's pickup truck rolls into the parking lot, and the crowd goes wild.
And he starts beating people's asses from the parking lot all the way into the ring.
Yeah, him and his pool cue.
I love the idea that he brought the pool cue from the bar.
Just in case he needed it.
Like, you broke it, I broke it, so I bought it, so I might as well bring it to this fucking arena. And he's like, he's the old Austin. Yeah. He's whooping people's asses at stunners left, right, and center. He's kicking every inch of ass that he can find. It's like... The only thing comparable to it is when the Big Show came back that one time on SmackDown and he chokeslammed the entire roster. But it's basically like that. Like, Austin beats up 30 people here.
Yeah. This time I'm going to paint you a word picture.
Yes.
There is chaos in the arena. Austin rolls in backstage. He takes some guys out. He makes a beeline to the ring. Every single person in this crowd, every man, woman, and child is on their feet chanting, Austin, Austin, Austin. It's still dire for the WWF. They're on their last breath. And then the glass shatters, and you hear the loudest pop you have ever heard. The camera pans the arena. It's pandemonium. We go. JR asks, is he here? Is he here? Is it the old Stone Cold? Austin comes through the curtain like a bat out of hell. Jim Ross on commentary. Oh, yeah, he's talking. He's talking. And you can just see that Stone Cold is back. Like, you can see it in his face. You can see it in his walk. Steve Austin's back.
Oh, my God. Chills, man. Chills.
It's what we wanted. I mean, the thing is, his heel turn made us hate him too much because we just missed the old Austin.
Yeah, they basically had a go back to being good Stone Cold card, the button, and they could have pressed it anytime they wanted because we were ready for it to happen.
Yeah, everybody was ready to just wipe the slate clean and like pretend the last couple months hadn't happened.
But to do it like this and to finally give us what we want in such a climactic fashion, it's chills, man. It's such a perfect wrestling storyline to be like, oh shit, we got Austin back now. This is so great.
Yeah. Austin proceeds to stun every WCW and ECW guy. The WWF cleans house and stands tall. I can't put over enough how much they had turned things around in the 2 weeks before this is that garbage Booker T versus Buff Bagwell match. And now look where we are.
And I think this segment, like, obviously this show does huge sales, and a large, large part of that is WCW versus WWE. But I think just as large a part of it is this.
Austin. Yeah, Austin being back.
It's people being like, oh shit, Austin's back. Holy fuck, we want to watch again now.
Yeah, I mean, it's the kind of thing you would have called your friends and told them about.
Yes.
Like, oh shit, did you see Austin came back to he's back, like he's back to being Austin, and he kicked everybody's ass.
Yeah, this is gonna be fucking great. Now, we can't – another thing is we can't tell the story of the invasion without talking about Kurt Angle. Because the entire time that Vince has been trying to convince Austin to be the old Austin, Kurt is being like, look, you don't need Austin. I'm the franchise here now. I'm the star you need. I'm the future. Trust me. I'll be the leader that will take WWF to victory. And the entire underlying thing of the entire invasion is Vince should have just listened to Kurt.
Yeah, well, it's Kurt Angle learning to be a badass, and he gets so hot. I mean, he's already on fire by the time we get here. I mean, I think it really started with the Shane match at King of the Ring, and it's just built and built throughout this month.
But like literally by this, like the invasion could have been used as a vehicle just to make Kurt Angle the top star of this company.
Yeah,
and it probably should have been.
Probably should have.
Unfortunately, by November, he's already an afterthought. But literally, like, there's a moment during the course of this feud where Kurt Angle is the top star of WWE. They just don't choose to pursue it.
Okay. And with all of that as the preamble, we finally made it to the show.
Woof.
It's July 22nd, 2001, Sunday evening. We're at the Gund Arena in Cleveland, Ohio. Coincidentally, that's the same arena Raw was at the night they announced the WCW purchase. That's kind of a remarkable bit of symmetry.
I wonder if Miz was at this show.
Probably.
I would have been if I lived in Ohio at that time.
The attendance, sellout crowd, 17,964 people, a staggering buy number of 770,000 buys. It's the highest grossing non-WrestleMania in WWE history. Just a smashing success.
And I mean, it beats a few WrestleManias too, right?
Oh, definitely. It beats a number of them. I mean, even some, like obviously WrestleMania 13, WrestleMania 12, WrestleMania 11, WrestleMania 10. Yeah, like it beats a lot of WrestleManias.
Like, this is a gigantic show. And we covered Vengeance before, and like the degree to which business falls off immediately after this show is a testament to what you see on this show.
On commentary, we've got Jim Ross and Michael Cole. What did you think of them as a team here?
They are, for two people who are straight play-by-play people, I've always thought that they did pretty well when they were together, honestly, because JR kind of falls into the commentary role and just lets Cole do play-by-play because that's all he was good at. That said, of all of your commentary options at this point, like, they suck so bad compared to Ross and Heyman.
Yeah.
Because that was special. And you really noticed.
We really did lose that. Yeah. I love Ross and Heyman together. We only got them for a couple months, but they were absolutely brilliant.
And I don't think that they had any plans to replace Heyman anytime soon.
No,
so that's why we're here and we don't have a backup.
Yeah, this all just came together at once. Now, subsequent to this, they would just like put Heyman back on commentary for the rest of the invasion. I think by SummerSlam, he's back doing commentary.
Well, that's what they should have done, because having those two dissenting voices on the same commentary team is good. Like, it's a positive thing.
So on Heat, Chavo Guerrero defeated Scotty 2 Hotty to give the Alliance a 1-0 lead.
Actually, let's
winner
talk.
of the match tonight gets nothing.
Yeah, let's talk about this.
No stakes.
They are treating it as if it matters who wins which matches, and it doesn't.
Critical momentum on the line.
And like, they book this show as if it does matter, because literally it comes right down to the wire in the main event. But there's nothing on the line. Like, how hard is it to put anything on the line?
Doesn't it feel easy to just say that, like, it? Problem being that they've already given WCW TV time, but just like, if the Alliance wins, they are in the right to wrestle on WWF TV, and if they lose, like, they're all fired.
Yeah, just something like that. Just some stakes. Like, now, if you really thought that this was actually going to work, you'd be like, well, this is for Raw or something like that. But obviously, they didn't really think it was going to work at this point, so they couldn't do that.
Although I kind of dig the idea of the Alliance just taking over Raw for like a few weeks.
Yeah.
Like, just like the idea that like Raw comes on and like now it's got like different graphics and it's Alliance Raw and like different people, commentary is like Shane and Heyman or something like that. And it wouldn't, maybe it lasts a couple weeks, but at least, you give it you make that part of the story.
Right. And then maybe you can, and then from there you can push them onto SmackDown, or you can push it to a storyline or something. But that would
Rock can come back and win back Raw for the WWF.
Absolutely. And but you still have Austin on it anyway, so it's still a show people would actually watch. Like it makes sense to do it that way. I kind of get why they didn't, because again, at this point, they must have doubts, like some serious doubts.
Yeah, understandable doubts. The opening package is dramatic. They intersplice clips of World War II and like speeches by Franklin Roosevelt and Winston Churchill with footage of the invasion.
If you go back and you start watching pay-per-views from 2000 to 2002, I want you to take a shot every time you see Franklin Delano Roosevelt's face. Yeah. Because this was Dave Sahadi's favorite move is intersplice FDR promo with wrestler promo.
It's better than the film by Freddie Fellini from Vengeance.
God, that's the weirdest fucking video. Guys, go back and listen to our Vengeance show, because we cut like literally they do a video that just has like sad murder clowns and stuff in it. Like it doesn't make sense.
This is a great stage, one of my favorites. The ramp is a V because you have the WWF coming out from one entrance and what they're calling the coalition at this point. They're not the alliance yet. But the ECW and WCW guys come out from a separate entrance, and like the entrances meet, and it's a Y more than a V, but then they just go down the rest of the ramp. Love it.
That's a great idea, and it kind of really reinforces that they have separate locker rooms and like they're being kept apart. Like I like that.
Yeah. Opening match, we've got Lance Storm and Mike Awesome against Edge and Christian. Storm tries to do a pre-match promo, but he's interrupted by Edge and Christian's entrance. The only real build to this match was a promo where Storm challenged Edge and Christian and said that there was no place in professional wrestling for offbeat shenanigans. I really actually love Lance Storm's promos, just the dryness of them. And I don't... Can I be serious for a moment is really one of the great catchphrases ever in wrestling.
Oh, it's such a great heat target.
Everything you know about the character.
And he doesn't even get to say it here. Like, let me just start by putting this out here right at the beginning of this show. Every inch of this show, no matter what WCW does to actually win, no matter how it is that they try to pretend like they're doing it otherwise, this is a burial of the alliance from start to finish. Like this is such a pro WWE show in every fiber of its being that it's almost insulting to make that they sold this show on the premise that the alliance was going to be competition. Like Storm doesn't even get his fucking promo out because it's time, because we don't want to let them talk. Like there's only WWE announcers. It's WWE production. All the WWE guys win all the matches that actually matter, and all the top WCW guys lose. It's such a burial.
Agreed. Yeah. Storm and Awesome were stablemates in WCW's Team Canada. That's not really referenced, and really nor should it be, because Mike Awesome being in Team Canada doesn't really make any sense.
Are you saying they shouldn't have brought in Elix Skipper here?
There should always be Elix Skipper. So what was Edge and Christian Christian was slow burning a heel turn on Edge. Edge had won the King of the Ring in June. Christian was jealous. He doesn't turn on him for a little while after this, but you can see it coming. I love that Edge got like the Stanley Cup for winning the King of the Ring, and Christian carries it around for him.
That is the best.
Also, Christian's gigantic sunglasses that like take up his entire face.
Like, I love the Edge Christian storyline that leads to Christian's turn. And like the heat that Christian gets for that turn, he maintains basically for the rest of his career.
Yeah.
Like people would just decide like, oh, we fucking hate Christian now. Despite the fact that they had loved him his entire point up until that, that's a good heel turn.
Yeah.
Like this guy's a scumbag.
Creepy little bastard, Christian.
Yeah. And I mean, people were just waiting to dislike him because he just has that quality to him. He does.
God, looks like a rat. God damn it.
It's also so weird that they're slow burning this storyline in the middle of the invasion. And I guess you can't just have the invasion and no other storylines, but it just feels so weird in their segments because it's like business as usual, you know?
Because it wasn't, I mean, they weren't planning to do the invasion yet. They
right.
were just running their storylines. And when Christian turns heel, he ends up joining the Alliance. I don't really know how I feel about that. I'm not thrilled with the idea that like every heel in the company has to be in the Alliance, but it would probably be kind of tough to just have like a WWF guy be a heel at that point.
I guarantee you that many times Vince sat around his office with Bruce and Pat or whoever, and we're just like, look at what they're doing to the NWO. They're just letting anybody in there. I would never do that. And then he proceeded to do exactly that.
There's a bad botch early here. Edge like goes down on all fours right in front of the ropes. Christian goes to like, springboard off his back, but he clips the ropes and just like falls right on his head on the floor.
Ugh, gross.
It looked bad.
Yeah.
It turned out he was perfectly okay. Storm and Awesome get heat on Christian. Mike Awesome basically disappears after this. I think he was really having drug problems around this time because otherwise he was really the star they needed.
Oh, yeah. Like, he was one of the only guys that WCW had who was big enough to credibly be a threat to WWE guys.
Probably should have been in the main event instead of Rhino.
Oh, for sure he should have. Like,
Yeah,
and he just has
6'5" boss.
And he's a guy that WWE fans have never really seen before. And he's got this crazy moveset that's awesome. And, like, they've never seen it. Like, that's cool.
I would have loved to see him against Taker.
Oh, God. Like, that could have been, like, an actual thing. But, like, Awesome could have wrestled pretty much anybody. Like, if you're dream booking what this card should have been, you can just slot him in against, Rock, Austin, Jericho, whoever it is that you need. Like, oh, big, huge guy who can move. Great. You can put that anywhere.
Awesome goes for a super power bomb, but Christian manages to backdrop him off the top rope. We get the hot tag to Edge. This is a great hot tag sequence. Edge was just on fire at this point. Like, you can see the star is there.
God, and we talked about this before, but it's just it's a shame that there's such a glass ceiling in WWE at this point because there's so many top stars. Because any other era, a guy this
all the way.
If this guy came along now, oh my God, they'd strap 50 million rockets to him. He'd be pinning the Undertaker on like Raw.
He hits the Educator for a 2 count. I love that I still remember the weird names of these Edge moves all these years later.
I named many social media accounts after this. My initial name on the Raja forums was Educutioner. That's where Cewsh comes from. This is a true story.
That was a more logical name.
Oh, God.
Storm gets a small package on Edge, but the referee's distracted. Christian sneaks in and rolls over the cradle for a 2 count by Edge. I like that Edge and Christian still cheat despite being faces. Good continuity there.
Absolutely. And it's mostly Christian doing the cheating. Yeah. Edge is just part of it. Like, that's the good thing.
Christian hits a double clothesline. Edge spears Awesome after Storm leapfrogs out of the way. Storm hits a super kick on Edge. Awesome gets a really close 2 count. Christian spears Awesome, and Edge gets the pin. Good opening match. I think it would have made more sense for Storm and Awesome to win here because of a miscommunication between Edge and Christian.
Absolutely. And here's the thing. I'm not saying that the WCW guys should have won every match here because obviously that's stupid. But the way that they do it is the WCW guys win all the matches that don't have their stars in them and then lose all the ones that do have their potential stars in them. And it should really be flipped. Like, you're trying to put over the incoming guys here to look like threats. And Edge and Christian have a reason to explain off why they would lose. So it's pretty silly to have them actually win this match.
We go backstage to Vince. He says that Edge and Christian reek of awesomeness. Regal tells him that Austin and Deborah have just arrived. Vince corrects him that it's the old Stone Cold who just arrived. Vince brings up Regal's match against Raven. Regal calls him a poncy little toe rag. We get a ton of these backstage segments tonight, and I thought they were almost all really entertaining.
Oh, absolutely. Like, basically, the entire backstage setup is Vince walks up to a guy and tells him, you got to win this for me. And that guy says, fuck you, Vince. I'm doing it for this other reason.
Second match. It's the match you always dreamed of when you were drawing up a WWF versus WCW pay-per-view. It's the referees match between Earl Hebner and Nick Patrick.
How? How does this get on the card? How?
Yeah, it's just, I go back to when I first started watching wrestling and I was booking out this show in my head, and it was Undertaker versus Sting, Goldberg versus Austin, Rock versus DDP, DX versus NWO. Somehow Earl Hebner versus Nick Patrick didn't make it on the card.
Now, there's a legitimate argument that Earl Hebner is the hardest push babyface in WWE because no one ever gets one over on Earl the Pearl.
No, he will knock your ass right to the ground with one push if you get in his face, even if you're Triple H.
I just love that Triple H's desire to like play with the referee dynamic and the Montreal Screwjob on top of it have created in Earl Hebner this like weird mythical figure as a referee, like the one referee that doesn't bump, the one referee who gives it right back to you, you motherfucker.
In this era, Rob Van Dam can't walk out of his house to get the mail without getting pedigreed by Triple H, and somehow Earl Hebner kicks Triple H's ass every show.
Oh, Jesus Christ. It's so good. Let the record show, too, that I have a signed shirt by Earl Hebner that I got at a TNA show where he had a longer line than any of their wrestlers did.
I hope it was bootleg merchandise he was selling out of the back of his car.
Oh, God, I hope so, too. In fact, I'm going to nominate Earl Hebner for Lawcast Hall of Fame because he's just such a lovely figure in wrestling history. He was there for the twin angle between Andre the Giant and Hulk Hogan. He's here jobbing out the poor WCW guys.
Yeah. So I should point out, Nick Patrick actually was a wrestler when he was younger. He had some knee injuries and retired from wrestling to become a referee, but he can actually like work and bump. And
he's the son of Jody Hamilton, one of the greatest of all time.
Earl Hebner is just super over and lovable. Also, Mick Foley is the referee for this match.
Foley is just kind of a referee on this show.
Yeah. So there's a backstory here. After Vince fired Foley as the commissioner toward the end of 2000, they showed this segment, this like pre-tape with him and Linda, where Foley was like pre-signing a bunch of open contracts that would like allow him to do whatever he wanted. And he used one of them to officiate the Shane Vince match at WrestleMania. And on this show, he used another of them to referee this match and another match we'll get to later.
So you're telling me that Mick Foley had basically golden tickets in his hand.
Like the equivalent of a Money in the Bank contract.
Yeah, for the ability to officiate and determine the winner of any match he saw fit at any point in wrestling. And he chose the referees match. And he chose the bra and panties match later. I can kind of understand why you do that.
Mick Foley's a skeevy old man.
But like, you chose the refs match?
Well, somebody has to officiate this match, and like, it can't really be a WCW or WWF referee.
I guess that's. I would have loved it if they were like, fucking Fonzie, come on down, buddy.
Why is Fonzie not part of the Invasion?
I don't know Well, I mean, I think Bruce recently said on the Something to Wrestle With that like they didn't even think about Fonzie. Like it never occurred to them.
Think about Fonzie.
Fonzie's the dude, man.
Didn't he used to work there?
Yeah, way back in the day. Yeah, he was an 80s ref.
Should have been Fonzie.
Should have been Fonzie. What a pop for Fonzie.
Both men bring out like all of the referees from their respective company as their posse.
One of the best things about that is I'm almost completely certain that all of the WCW refs they bring out are still there. And all the WWE, Charles Robinson, Mike Posey, what's his face, the other guy, like, and then all of the other guys are gone.
All gone. Fuck you, Mike Chioda. Jimmy Corderas.
Yep.
It's amazing that you know the referees from back then, but I can't name any of the modern referees because they refuse to acknowledge that they're actual people and have names.
I keep noticing new referees I've never seen before and being like, wait, who the fuck is that guy?
Yeah, they will never have a name. They
Yeah.
are not people anymore.
Nope, they are just conduits to the back, basically.
Yeah. Vince can't wait until he can just have a robot officiate the matches.
God, I can't wait until that. That sounds amazing. Imagine the bumps the robot takes.
Yeah, this match is actually good. The crowd is so hot for this. It's hilarious.
This is probably one of the 3 best matches on the show. Earl Hebner has no idea how to punch, so his solution to that is just fucking punch him.
He just throws actual punches. Like Nick Patrick made such a great heel. Like just such a slime ball.
Yeah, there's no question who the baby faces and heels are here. Like the fans love Earl and they fucking hate Nick Patrick. But really, that just goes to show it doesn't take that long to build heat on a new guy who the fans know nothing about. It's not like the fans knew Nick Patrick from before. Like there's a certain degree who might know him as like the NWO referee.
Yeah.
But like
but
it's
a lot
been
of the crowd
years.
doesn't know that. Yeah, that's going back to 96 and 97.
So basically in like 4 segments, Nick Patrick is this super over heel. Like, it's not that hard, guys.
And this is just like demonstrating how hot people are for WWF versus WCW, that referees fighting each other is over.
Now, I don't think this should have been on this show, but I do think this is a Raw main event. That you can,
a hilarious, awesome Raw main event.
Let's say, until we sort this thing out, we're all going on strike. We need a match.
Foley throws out all the referees after they get in a fight on the floor. Patrick gets distracted arguing with Foley. Hebner comes in with a shoulder block and gets the pin in 2 minutes. Looked like Patrick actually kicked out of this pin.
Oh God, that's such a Nick Patrick thing to do.
Well, yeah, karma comes back around as he gets quick counted by Foley.
Hell yeah.
I wish Sting had shown up to beat him up with his baseball bat for 10 minutes.
My favorite idea of this match is I just wonder if Earl Hebner's sitting in the back like, what should my finish be?
We screw him.
I had to say, like, should
Sharpshooter.
Dude, if they had screw jobbed him, in Earl's only match.
It would have been wonderful. Foley proceeds to give Patrick Sacco after the match. 2-minute match. Loved it.
It was great, honestly. Like, there are only like 3 things on this show that I would actually recommend that you watch, and somehow this is one of them.
We get a replay of the events of SmackDown where DDP abducted Deborah and locked her in the trunk of his car, then drove off. Then backstage, we get a segment where Deborah and Sarah, who is the Undertaker's wife, talk about how creepy DDP is, because apparently after DDP kidnapped her, he just like let her out of the trunk and let her go. He's not a very good stalker.
Guys, Sarah and Deborah are backstage, and Deborah's just like, I got kidnapped last week, and then he just let me go. That was so weird. I don't understand. And Sarah's literally just stirring her coffee and is just like, yeah, he sexually assaulted me once.
Yeah.
And just like, wait, what? Why are you so casual about this?
It never should have been acknowledged on screen that either Steve Austin or The Undertaker were married.
Oh, God, no.
It's a terrible idea on both.
It just doesn't. It doesn't. Those characters are so sexless characters, you know?
Yes.
It's like they don't need that. It's not part of them.
Next match, we've got the APA against Chuck Palumbo and Sean O'Haire. It's the WCW Tag Champions against the WWF Tag Champions. Monster pop for the APA here. They've really gotten over in the last few weeks as kind of the spiritual leaders of the mid-card. Like, obviously, you've got Austin and Taker and Angle on top, but then, like, the APA are the other guys who are really standing out as the leaders.
Absolutely. And it's really great, honestly, to finally see them kind of emerge that way. I was a huge APA fan around this time because they were just totally awesome guys who just beat the shit out of people. And I will still argue that the Clothesline from Hell is one of my favorites of all time. Like, obviously, it's a take on the lariat, but the way that he does it, he just leans into it. It's so good.
This is where we get to talk about Sean O'Haire.
Oh, man.
This guy had so much potential, and he really never amounted to anything. What was up with that?
He had endless potential, but this is the problem with the WCW guys who came over. There were a lot of them that had potential and that had the look and that had maybe the athletic ability. The problem is that during their training phase, they got such crappy training or just incomplete and were rushed so quickly onto the shows. It's really hard to put that back in the bottle and convince guys like, hey, you need to go and get a lot more training before you're ready. And like he couldn't work a real match. He could do a lot of cool stuff. Like he could do a cool swanton and some great kicks, but he couldn't put a match together. And he didn't have a great grasp on how to do characters. So when he would later try to do like that super master manipulator thing, that was really interesting.
That was such a great character idea, and he was so the wrong guy for that.
Exactly. Like, he just didn't have the ability to portray.
That should have stayed in the box of gimmicks for a while longer.
Exactly. And that's the thing. Like, he had everything that you look at and you're like, whoa, well, that's a lot of potential. But did he have a lot of potential? Because at the end of the day, like, if you can't harness it and you're not willing to put in the work, you don't have potential. You just have ability. And he didn't have enough of it.
And in the case of, Palumbo and O'Hare and Jindrak and all these natural-born thriller guys, like, they were all pulled out of the power plant way too soon just because WCW was desperate for fresh talent.
Yeah, if you get bad training right off the bat, then it's especially once they've tasted a ton of success, you're going to convince them to like go back to OVW and start over? No, they don't want to do that.
Chuck Palumbo, I would say much less potential, but he stuck around forever. Must have been a nice guy.
Oh, God. Do you remember when he briefly had a gimmick as the American Badass?
Yeah.
Like
I thought that was kind of a good. If you ride a motorcycle, you're automatically over.
But it just felt like such a pale reflection of the Undertaker's version that it was just like, yeah, this is lame.
Yeah. APA not selling for these jabronis.
Well, let's before we talk about how they just beat the shit out of them, let's talk about the segment a couple weeks earlier, where up until this point, WCW guys have been running in out of the crowd, jumping WWE guys and bouncing. Well, this time they get caught.
Yeah.
Jindrak and O'Hare come out and they beat up. I don't even remember who they beat up.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah. But then they're going to run away. But WWE guys have, for the first time, been like, hey, I wonder if they'll go out the side doors. And so they catch them, throw them back in the ring, and then every member of the mid-card does their finisher to these two.
Fresh fish.
They literally beat them down for 15 minutes. Jobbed them the fuck out.
Oh, I love that.
And it was great.
Probably not the best way to like introduce those guys.
I'd say if you think that these are guys who actually have potential, you can't have them get destroyed in their debut.
That would have been perfect for like Hugh Morris and Sean Stasiak.
Yeah, guys that you're not going to do anything with. These guys were the tag champs.
Yeah. So yeah, in this era, there was what I feel like there was the APA test you had to pass as a new tag team. Like the Public Enemy failed it, and they got the shit kicked out of them and got fired. Yep. And the Dudleys passed it, and here Palumbo and O'Hare fail the Acolyte test.
Absolutely, and it's clear that they do. And the clothesline from hell that JBL hits him with at the end of this match is like. Yeah, a Kobashi lariat from the sky. Like, you can tell how much he wants to hit you with it by the degree to which he lays into it. Because sometimes he'll just be doing it standing up like a normal clothesline. But sometimes he'll just, like, put his whole body weight into it and just smash you in the chest. He does that here, and the guy, which one was it? Was it O'Hare?
I think it was O'Hare.
Just goes down like a sack of shit.
Yeah, he woke up and he was in OVW.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, I think they pretty much stretched him out of there and put him in a crate and shipped him to Louisville.
Oh my goodness, it was bad. Like this is hardly competitive. It's clear that they don't think Palumbo and O'Hare are ready, and they're just destroying them.
They're probably not wrong either.
Oh no, and I mean they're not out of the company shortly after this, but they're not a tag team anymore. Like they're like. These guys go down to whatever semblance of developmental we have because you're not ready.
Vince and Jericho talk backstage. Jericho cuts a promo on how fat and gross Paul Heyman is. Jericho says Heyman has corrupted Shane and Stephanie. He actually does a good thing here where he's like, WCW never had a leader, but in Heyman the alliance has a leader, and that's why they're dangerous. This is doing a good job of actually putting them over as a threat, and specifically Heyman. Now they, as far as I remember, don't actually follow up on this story thread about how Heyman has corrupted Shane and Stephanie.
But also, there's a part of this where Jericho is just like, you can trust me, Vince. I'm with you. Because they're still playing off of the idea that Jericho, it's a threat that Jericho might go somewhere else because he's the only guy who's been in all three, really. He's the only top star anyway.
Yeah.
Well, I guess Austin has, but you don't really think of him that way, the way you do Jericho. And it's just they are clearly laying the groundwork for Jericho to defect. And we'll talk about this later, but they're clearly laying that out.
Then Shane, Stephanie, and Heyman are backstage with Kidman. Heyman's freaking out that they're losing momentum, they're losing everything. Kidman tells them to calm down, and he's going to show why X-Pac sucks. X-Pac sucks.
Poor X-Pac. He does not deserve this.
So it's X-Pac versus Billy Kidman. It's the WWF Light Heavyweight Champion against the WCW Cruiserweight Champion. X-Pac out to the amazing X Factor entrance with the Uncle Cracker theme music.
Oh, you can all hear it in your head right now, can you?
You're dealing with the X Factor. I got everything I ever wanted. I'll never give that back.
Oh my God. It's the greatest, shittiest theme.
You can't get more heelish than coming out to Uncle Cracker with purple flashing lights.
I think the first wrestling forum argument I ever participated in was, is X-Pac sucks heat a real heat, or is it fake heat that it doesn't count? It's mean real heat. It's not the good heat. I was like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Were people booing the character or the person X-Pac here? I think it's a little of both.
Absolutely. But
yeah,
that's
what happened here? I did research for this, and no one seems sure when this actually started. When did people start hating X-Pac this much?
Now let the record show that I started watching again in mid 2000. By that point, X-Pac is a complete afterthought. He's basically not even on the shows that often. And he's
dirtbag heel henchman.
Yeah, he's just kind of around. But he doesn't have this kind of heat yet. That doesn't come until later. But if you go back and watch the Attitude Era, at the beginning of 99, X-Pac is the third hottest babyface on the show.
He's crazy over when he's feuding with Shane, when he's doing the Kane thing. Yeah, he is beloved.
And it all falls apart for him in a 2-year span. And now he's people legit want him to die. And that's where does this come from?
As JR points out on commentary, X-Pac is only 29 here, and his career might as well be over. He never does anything after this.
He wrestles for TNA off and on for a couple years. He's done.
Yeah,
but how? I just think about it like this. X-Pac is 45 right now. There are people on the WWE main
younger than
roster.
Triple H.
Yes. He's 5 years younger than Triple H.
The same age as John Cena. Is John Cena 45 yet?
Yeah, I think he's right about that age. There are people on the main roster that age. We lost a decade of X-Pac that we could have had as really good wrestler, mid-card, gatekeeper X-Pac. It's just wild to think that his whole career was over before he was 30.
JR starts off by saying that X-Pac is unusually getting cheered tonight, and then the crowd immediately starts chanting X-Pac sucks.
This is one of those moments where JR has been told to tell us something that blatantly isn't true, and he doesn't like it, but he's doing it anyway.
You can hear him saying, I told you, in his head.
Yep.
X-Pac smartly works this match as the heel. He ground and pounds Kidman while Kidman is doing all the flashy stuff. Kidman gets the sky high. X-Pac goes for a power bomb, but Kidman reverses into a face buster. Of course, in his entire career, Billy Kidman was never successfully powerbombed.
That's one of like the lesser known like things about wrestling that just tickles me.
You can't hit a Samoan in the head, and you can't powerbomb Kidman.
You can't powerbomb Kidman, and yet they always try. You can't do it.
Kidman dives off the top rope. X-Pac catches him with the X Factor. X-Pac goes for the Bronco Buster, but Kidman gets his foot up and kicks him right in the nuts. And Kidman hits the shooting star press for the win. I really liked that match. After this, both the Cruiserweight and Light Heavyweight titles just disappear. In November, Mick Foley will do a promo where he's announcing they're merging all the titles, where he says, I was going to merge the title and the Light Heavyweight title, but nobody seems to know where the hell X-Pac is, and nobody seems to care.
Gosh, that's vicious.
Yeah. It was a very salty promo from Mick Foley.
Oh, boy. It's funny because I feel like if RVD versus Jeff Hardy hadn't happened on this show, we would remember Billy Kidman a lot more fondly. He would have had a lot more momentum coming out of this because it really feels here like they want to push Kidman.
Yeah, and he's over here. Crowd's into him.
Yeah, I mean, he's kind of got the same character as RVD.
Yeah, just laid back stoner.
I feel like he definitely suffers from not being Rob Van Dam and just being overshadowed by a guy who does more flips better.
I mean, the shooting star press is a much cooler finisher than the 5-star frog splash, but other than that, Van Dam owns him.
Exactly. So, unfortunately, Kidman had the difficult task of trying to measure up to Rob Van Dam.
DDP chats with Shane and Stephanie and Heyman. I did like that Stephanie seemed to be disgusted with pervert DDP here.
Yeah, I mean, of course she would be, like any human being would be. This is also a good opportunity to talk about Stephanie McMahon's hair.
Yeah.
Because
I think it's kind of hot.
I don't know what the fuck she has going on. She's got like this weird frizzy weave and cornrow thing that is unlike any hairstyle I've ever seen in all of my life.
It's like when you see a movie that does like a parody flashback to the 80s. Like that's her hair here.
Yeah. Like it's not something you would ever see on a human being in real life. It's just like, I don't know where you got that, but maybe it's the equivalent of like Jericho's top knot heat. Like she's just going for bad hair heat.
Yeah. Then Stacy Keibler and Tori Wilson have a chat, and literally they just talk about their boobs and their asses. Like, oh wow, you've got great boobs. Man, Stacy, you've got a great ass.
Like in a time where segments like this happened all the time, this is maybe the most blatant one ever. Like literally, like Tori just squeezes her tits together and just like, yeah, they're pretty big. And Stacey's just like, yeah, well, my legs go all the way from my feet to my. It's like, holy shit.
Yeah, and like Stacey goes to walk away, and Tori smacks her on the ass, and that's the segment.
I mean, it's a pretty good segment.
Yeah. Next up, we've got Raven against William Regal in a why the fuck would you put these guys against each other match? And this would have been great as a hardcore match, actually, but it's not a hardcore match.
Yeah, I would love to see Regal do some stuff like that. Like, he never really did.
Regal and Finlay had some badass hardcore matches in WCW that were basically shoot fights.
For sure. It's curious why they're putting any WWE heels on this show, right?
Yeah,
like
Regal has gotten over as a babyface, but like Regal working as a babyface is just tough.
And like he only kind of is here because he's still basically a heel, and he's still Vince's toady, and Vince is still a heel. So it's really weird. Like there's no one in this match to cheer for because Raven's a heel, Regal's a heel, and they're both really unlikable heels.
Yeah. Definitely feels like they could be doing more with Raven here, but that's just the story of this WWF run. When he came in, I thought he was going to be like on top working with The Rock, and instead he was in the hardcore division almost immediately.
Yeah, it definitely feels like this would have been their opportunity to do more with him too.
Yeah,
but
as the face of ECW.
But also like a couple of things. One, Vince hates Raven. Like he'll never forgive him for corrupting Shane McMahon.
I love the idea that like Vince is so blinded as a parent that he thinks like Shane had never smoked weed until he met Raven.
Yeah, Raven fucking bought his weed from Shane. I don't know where Vince is getting that. But second of all, like Raven looks like Redbeard the pirate here, with like he's got like nasty
God.
dreadlock braids and like they're like bright ginger red and like he's wearing like Walmart jean shorts and
leather jean shorts.
And it's just and like he's not wearing like cool shirts anymore. He's just wearing like weird ripped up clothes. He just looks like a nasty hobo, not like a cool grunge guy. It's weird.
No, he could never recapture and the amazing thing is he very much did recapture the ECW magic in WCW. He was super over in WCW.
Oh,
and then he came to the WWF and they just had nothing for him.
And here's the thing, he recaptured it in TNA. It's not like it was all gone. He recaptured it in Ring of Honor. Yeah. Everywhere but here.
Yeah, crowd just goes to sleep during this match. Like, Regal's not really over as a face yet. Raven's an undercarder. Their styles just clash horribly. Regal's just Regal, I really enjoy his matches, but they're very, like, weird and very much not the typical WWF style. He's just one of the only guys who's allowed to just kind of work his old European style.
Yeah, I think like we talked about this before, especially like his WrestleMania matches with like Jericho and Van Damme and stuff. Like they're good in their way, but they're just so different from the usual kind of match that they just feel off. Like everything, the chemistry feels weird. Everything Regal does just feels like a step or two different from what everyone else is doing. It makes for. I thought he was a terrible wrestler for a long time before I realized that he wasn't, and that's why.
Well, it's just everything he does is designed to like slow the match down and suck the energy out of it, which is fine when he's a heel, but when he's the face, there's just nothing for the match to go to.
Right.
Oh, what happens here? Again, I'll point out, when we were dreaming up WWF versus WCW matches, this is not what we were thinking of.
No.
I mean, we have Regal, who's really a WCW guy, against Raven, who's an ECW guy.
And, like, we're, like, pretty knee-deep in matches that, like, nobody even wants to see. Let's just separate it completely. If this were a normal pay-per-view...
Oh, yeah, if this is fully loaded, yeah, nobody gives a shit about Regal versus Raven on that show.
Yes, this card is a disaster even if it's a fucking fully loaded.
The referee gets distracted by Raven. Taz runs in, hits Regal with a Tazplex, and then Raven hits the Raven effect, DDT for the pin. Shitty match.
Shitty.
Vince talks to Undertaker and Kane and Sarah. Vince fires them up, so Taker grabs him by the throat and slams him up into the wall, and then he walks away, and Vince is kind of like, oh yeah, I got him.
Yeah, or you could misconstrue that facial expression on Vince's face to be excitement about something else.
Next up, we have like one of the worst pay-per-view matches I've ever seen.
What the fuck is this?
Big Show, Billy Gunn, and Albert against Chris Kanyon, Sean Stasiak, and Hugh Morris.
Dude.
It's a bonus match. They didn't promote this. It's a bonus.
You know, the entire reason that this match is on is so they can put on possibly the two worst wrestling theme songs ever produced back to back, where we get fucking X Factor theme for the second time tonight, and then we get the one Billy Gunn's I've Got It All.
Look at all I've got. It could make a blind man see.
Dude,
everything you think you wish you had, but God gave it all to me.
Someday we'll do a whole separate podcast about like Billy Gunn and
his one Billy Gunn.
That's what he doesn't work in that feud with The Rock, and they're like, shit, what do we do with him? The one Billy Gunn.
In the last few weeks, the night after Edge won King of the Ring, he interrupted Edge's coronation to complain that as a former King of the Ring, he didn't get to be in the tournament. And Edge called him, bitter Billy Bitch Cakes.
And that sticks. Billy Bitch Cakes sticks.
And then subsequently, Billy Gunn and Big Show are put together to form a tag team called Shoguns. And as Jim Ross tells us, that's because they're both underachievers. Not kidding. Not kidding. Yeah, JR completely buries these guys.
Are these
Big Show has taken to wearing a shirt that says Big Show and has an arrow pointing down at his dick.
Yep.
And Albert's here. Albert's the Intercontinental Champion. He's getting a gigantic push that doesn't last after this show.
Albert's probably another guy that got kind of screwed over by the Invasion getting jump started like this because they wanted to do something with him, but now there's just no time, you know? He's not going to be a big player in this whole thing.
The WCW team comes out to Mr. Perfect's music.
That's some weird kayfabe, actually, because Sean Stasiak beat Mr. Perfect in WCW for the rights to that music.
Perfect, Sean.
Yes. But for some reason, they carry that over to here. Like he and Booker T are the only two who keep their music from WCW, which is very strange.
Yeah, I had forgotten about this. And then when we came on, I'm like, oh, Mr. Perfect wasn't on this show, although he does come in like right after the Invasion is over.
Yeah.
Another guy that, probably could have been helpful here.
Wouldn't have fucking hurt.
JR says that Sean Stasiak was blackballed from the WWF, which is a shoot because he was fired when it turned out he was secretly recording conversations with other wrestlers.
Why was he secretly recording conversations with other wrestlers?
I don't know. Do you think it was like he was going to write a book someday, or so he like had a record of stuff he could send to the dirt sheets? I don't know.
I think the dirt sheets is probably the correct answer.
I think. Do you remember the character Just Joe, whose deal was like he was a snitch? I think that was a rib on Sean Stasiak.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. This match is dog shit. Like, the WCW team is Canyon, Sean Stasiak, and Hugh Morris. So there's one good wrestler in this match.
Now, let's talk about Big Show for a second. Because
fuck is going on with him.
At this point, he's basically useless.
Oh, yeah.
But if anybody's going to turn and join the Alliance, shouldn't Big Show be one of those guys?
He was in WCW. He's a Paul Heyman guy. Yeah. Makes total sense. They absolutely should have put him in the Alliance.
If it's just going to be a stable of heels, at least give him some, that's the best use for him. If he can't wrestle,
just a big enforcer.
Just be the big enforcer guy for WCW, because WWE doesn't have anybody who can compete with him on that level. And then you can put him in the main events and it means something, right? Using him, he's not even a part of this.
Yeah. I think Big Show and Jericho should probably have both defected and joined the Alliance.
Yeah, we've talked about this. Jericho should have been the leader of the Alliance. Let's just put that out there. They built to it.
Perfect.
It was the storyline. Jericho's whole deal is that nobody's appreciated him. He can't win the big one. He's trying so hard to win the big one, but he just keeps coming up short. So he becomes the leader of the Alliance and uses them to win the title.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
And he's jealous of Van Dam. He's got the relationship with Stephanie. There's all sorts of stuff they can play with there.
You can play off of everything. Yeah. And then you still, instead of it being Steve being in charge and only having Angle to work with, Jericho works with Angle, Rock, Austin, everybody. And
this would have made him such a star.
That would have made Jericho, and you can make Angle. And literally, you can make Jericho versus Angle basically be these are the stars of the future. Here it is. We made them with the Invasion. Instead, nobody gets over at all.
No, and nobody gets over in this match. The WCW guys get the win. Stasiak hits a reverse DDT on Gunn, and Morris gets the pin after he awkwardly shoos Stasiak out of the ring.
I just wonder if Morris was just no, I'm staying, you're going, so I'm going to get this pin. Go.
After the match, Big Show proceeds to chokeslam the WCW guys, and then he also does the alley-oop on Canyon. The alley-oop being his shit finisher where he gets them up for a power bomb and then drops them backwards.
Garbage. It's a garbage finish. Bianca Blair in NXT right now is doing the alley-oop, and I wish I could tell her, please don't do that move, because it looks like shit and it's never going to get over.
Backstage, Shane fires up Booker T, and then Regal fires up Tajiri for his match against Taz. We've got Taz against Tajiri. Tajiri's music strikes me as more stereotypically Middle Eastern than Japanese.
Yeah, I always thought that's
super catchy.
It came from a very weird place. And he's like such a kind of a weird Japanese stereotype too, but also just he's such an odd guy that it works. Like it's not pure stereotype like WWE tries to do with guys like that. Yeah. He just had this like weird edge to him that made him feel different, and that actually got him over.
So rather than bring him in as just like the Japanese buzzsaw, they bring him in as like Regal's Kato.
And literally, he doesn't wrestle a match for like his first 6 months. Like he's just there helping
Regal. They do this thing where like Regal's like Regal needs somebody to wrestle a match, and like Tajiri asks him if he can do it, and like Regal's like, "Oh, I don't know if you're ready." Like he puts him in there, and of course he kicks ass because he's Tajiri.
Yeah, and Regal's like, "What the fuck? Are you serious?"
Very similar to the Eugene storyline.
Yes, except Tajiri actually gets to go places after that a little bit.
Tajiri's just Japanese. He's not mentally disabled.
God, to Vince, they're the same. It's worth mentioning that until Shinsuke Nakamura comes in, Tajiri is the highest a Japanese wrestler gets on the card ever.
Well, that's only because they had to pull the plug on Hirohito.
Oh, Jesus. That's a discussion for another time.
You can hear all about that in our Judgment Day 2004 episode.
Oh, my God. They picked Johnny's hired the wrong Japanese guy.
This match is not good at all. Taz sucks.
Okay.
Taz is done.
A lot of people will say, like,
Taz why looks like a fat janitor here.
Yeah, why isn't Taz a bigger part of the invasion? Like, why isn't he a bigger part of all of this? And the reason why is because he's wearing a jumpsuit like he's a fucking janitor. He's fat and out of shape, and he's small. And I know people feel like we're like, well, it shouldn't matter that he's small. He still kicks ass. No. When he stands next to real wrestlers, he's a midget. And I hate saying
how gigantic everybody on the roster is here.
Like that match between him and Triple H is a joke. Triple H is Andre the Giant.
Taller. Yeah. Like Taz looks like Alexa Bliss against him.
Yeah. And I mean, he can still be credible. He can still do stuff, but he's just also not in very good shape to do anything. So it just doesn't work. Despite the fact that his entrance is awesome.
If you ever cross paths with Taz, he is choking your ass out for sure.
I absolutely believe that. And Taz, I will happily let you choke me out for podcast supremacy. However, please believe me when I tell you that you looked like ass in 2001.
Tajiri gets Taz in the tarantula, then the green mist, and then he hits the buzzsaw kick for a win in 5 minutes. Again, it's the WCW invading the WWF, and we've got a Taz versus Tajiri match on the show.
It would have, I think, been really impactful if Tajiri had like defected to ECW and like fucked up Regal.
Yeah, I bet he would have gotten a ton of heat for that.
In fact, this could have just been a Tajiri versus Regal match, and that would have actually worked, right?
Yeah.
Instead, we have 2 segments for a storyline that no one gives a shit about.
Backstage, Matt Hardy gives Jeff Hardy a pep talk, and then RVD sneaks up on Matt and hits him with a chair.
I actually loved this.
Yeah.
This is really cool because RVD just waffles Matt with the chair, goes for Jeff, but Jeff dives out of the way. And then Rob's just like, come on, man, you're next. And like walks away. And like, that's cool. Like, that's the vibe that this whole show should have.
Then we go to WWF New York, where Hardcore Holly is signing autographs. A kid in a WCW shirt comes up to get an autograph. Holly tells him this isn't WCW New York and rips his shirt off.
As good as that last segment was, that's how shit this one is. Hardcore Holly is the worst person in the world. This kid looks like he's 15. And Hardcore Holly just like gets up and is like, hey. This ain't WCW New York. And then he rips the shirt off of this kid in front of a group of onlookers and chases him off. The kid probably pisses his pants. It's like, dude, what the fuck, man?
So playing off my earlier idea of the Alliance taking over Raw, I actually would have loved it if they took over and it became WCW New York.
Oh, if he just says this ain't WCW New York, and then a bunch of WCW guys jump him, and it's like, now it is.
Yeah. I mean, this is mostly just because I'm obsessed with like the bad future from Back to the Future 2. But yeah, like I'm just envisioning this entire world where like the Alliance won and everything has become Alliance themed.
That's amazing. I'm just wondering, how does Hardcore Holly get on this show in this spot?
Well,
how are they like?
It was this, or he would be part of that 6-man tag match.
Yeah, but it's just like, hey, you know what? We better get a segment from WWE New York where Hardcore Holly beats.
They were paying like $10 million a month in rent at that place, so they had to get it on every show.
I guess that's true.
Yeah, no, I mean that's just a pay-per-view. That's a pay-per-view, and even like a Raw and SmackDown staple in this era. I think that they would always have a cutaway to New York.
Oh man.
They actually did a good thing with it on one of the Raws leading up to this. It was the one that was at Madison Square Garden. They had like Shane and Booker T go over and take over WWF New York. So Austin and Angle leave the Garden to go after them. But when they get there, they find out, oh no, like they're not here. They left. And then we cut back to the arena, and that's when Booker comes out and attacks Vince.
That's pretty cool.
That was the one time they actually successfully used WWF New York.
Yeah, you actually have to be in New York for that to work.
Yeah. Next up, for the hardcore title, we've got Jeff Hardy defending against Rob Van Dam in our only title match of the evening.
Do you agree that this is the only match on this entire show that may have made it onto like your dream card, or like how you put this together? And even then, it probably wouldn't, because Jeff Hardy's not really there yet.
Yeah, but this is actually good.
Yeah, this felt like that.
Match, a good mix of styles, and it's like the most extreme guy from the WWF against the ECW guy.
This match makes 2 stars. I think that's very fair to say. Like
Rob Van Dam is just liquid hot. Like he's there right away.
Yeah, a month from now, they could have given him the title and run with him.
Absolutely. This is some of my favorite ring gear ever. This Tiger Stripes singlet looks awesome.
He looks fucking cool.
Yeah.
It's no less cool now than it was then, honestly. Like, it still looks badass.
Yeah. I don't think he ever wore this again, unfortunately.
Yeah, he just wasn't a guy who recycled outfits like that for whatever reason. But yeah, this one's fucking rad.
Yeah. These guys are going to save this show or die trying, and they pretty much die trying.
Also, let the record show that this is during a period of time where I think Jeff Hardy has like 35 ladder matches in like 6 months.
It's horrible.
Like, it winds up fucking his body up so bad that he gets addicted to drugs. It's basically the thing that spirals his whole career after this. So that by the time they want to push him, he's already too fucked up to be pushed. But, so like, it's really cool that he's doing all of this stuff, but in the back of your head, you got to remember that Jeff Hardy's killing himself right at this point in his career.
The crowd is so into Van Dam. Just a huge RVD chant from the beginning of the match.
Yeah, and like I don't remember how like he showed up and like did that attack, and
yeah,
he
I don't think he's wrestled. I don't remember him even really doing anything after that before this.
Like it didn't seem like they were really pushing him that hard at the time. But man, he's the star of this show.
Yeah,
like if they had debuted him outside the Invasion, I think like if they had debuted him like 2 years later, he probably would have just gone straight to the top. Like the Invasion just gets in his way.
He has a match against The Rock on SmackDown a couple weeks after this where almost the entire crowd is cheering him over The Rock.
Absolutely.
Like they edited it out on TV.
Well, during this time, I started going to wrestling shows like with my dad. And like the very first wrestling shirt I ever bought was a Rob Van Dam shirt. The one with like the dragon and the yin and yang symbol in the middle in gold.
Good shirt.
Yeah, it's a great shirt. Because he was just that guy. Like he was the guy. Like there's just no comparing it. Like he was one of the hottest people that I can ever remember just from watching live. Like him here is comparable to like CM Punk during the Summer of Punk. Just that level of momentum.
And he's really done nothing except show up.
Exactly.
Like, he just by existing and being Rob Van Dam, he's over.
And like you can tell that Vince doesn't understand. Like, well, like
get it.
He's not doing anything, but like he didn't have to, man. He's Rob Van Dam. He's coolness personified in a wrestling ring.
Yeah. Van Dam goes up to the top rope. He gets pushed off. Hardy goes to do that move where he kind of runs, tightrope walks to the security barrier. Van Dam pops up and just shoves him off, which was great.
Yep.
Van Dam drops Hardy on the barrier. He hits that, spinning heel kick off the apron down onto him. Like, this is all just standard RVD stuff, but it's so cool to see him doing it on a big stage here.
And it's so fun to watch this match and kind of relive it because for me and for a lot of fans,
I marked the fuck out during this match in 2001.
This is our first time seeing almost all of this shit. Like, I remember going on like Kazaa and like seeing like some gifs of him like leaping into the crowd on Bam Bam and like doing some shit like that. But you didn't just see like all of his stuff. It's like when he does like the spinning heel kick on the guardrail, like I'd never seen a move like that before.
Yeah, I had seen some RVD matches because I watched ECW on TNN, but like not that much. And this was just something. This is him doing it in front of 20,000 people on a major pay-per-view. And the crowd was just exploding for everything.
And like everything both of these guys do is perfect. And they're doing like some shit that could easily go wrong here. And everything they do, they just nail. Like, this is the best case scenario for both guys.
Van Dam gets on the apron. Hardy hits him with a sunset flip to the sunset flip power bomb to the floor, and it's absolutely brutal. Like the splat noise he makes when he hits the ground. This is normally a move they would do through a table to break the fall.
Yeah, and also, like, I remember them faking this spot so many times where someone would go for this and it wouldn't work. Like, that had been happening for years. This is the first time I ever saw somebody actually get power bombed off of the spot. And so I was like, oh my God, no.
Yeah. Jeff pulls out the tallest ladder I have ever seen. This thing was seriously 20 feet tall.
Like, even by Jeff Hardy jumping off of its standards, this might be the tallest one.
This thing, when he set this up and climbed it, he was like 10 feet above the ring, and it was on the floor.
And this is so dangerous, this spot. Because he's up there, and it's shaking, and he's trying to... I don't know what... Were they going for the spot that they did?
What did they actually do here?
Because Van
Jeff
Dam
just kind of fell off.
Well, Van Dam runs over to it because it looks like Jeff's gonna fall.
I think that
he holds on to it, and then he just winds up pushing it over with Jeff on it. But like somehow Jeff manages to stay perfectly balanced on it until just the last minute and jumping off. But this so easily could have been him taking a 50-foot splat on the ground.
This is the insane thing about Jeff Hardy and ladders is like most people do a ladder, they climb up to like the second to the top rung or like the top rung. Jeff actually climbs up onto the top of the ladder.
Yes.
And can somehow stand on it.
And it's so precarious. You can see it shaking.
You see his legs shaking.
But he can still, like, I've seen Jeff Hardy jump off of a lot of tall ladders. I've only seen him miss like once. Like, that's pretty incredible.
Yeah, he's got a pretty good record.
Like, I guess if you're going to trust anybody, you trust him. But literally, like, he gets shoved, and, like, Rob tries to do it, protect him as much as he can.
Yeah.
But like, Jeff's just taking a naked bump on the ramp. Like, there's nothing protecting him.
Yeah. JR breaks out one of his great lines. He's like, oh, yeah, somebody at home's saying they know how to fall. How do you learn to fall off a ladder?
Now, that's ironic because Jeff does know how to fall and actually makes this a lot safer than somebody else would have. Because he literally propels himself out at the last second and, like, does a roll. And so, like, he takes it pretty well. But it could have so easily been worse, man. This is the closest I've ever seen somebody in WWE to, like, a 20-foot fall onto, like, the dirt.
Yeah. Jeff recovers almost immediately. He chases Van Dam up the ramp with a chair and then gets hit with the Van Daminator. Jeff is knocked off the ramp into like the gap between the ramps where the Y comes together. Van Dam drags him out and hits his spinning leg drop. They go back to the ring. Van Dam does his kind of like surfboard chair drop kick thing. Van Dam goes for the split-legged moonsault, but Hardy gets his knees up. Hardy goes for the swanton bomb and misses. Van Dam puts the hardcore title on Hardy's chest, hits him with the 5 stars frog splash. gets the 1, 2, 3. Like in 2001, this match blew my mind. I'm not as wowed by it now, but it's still a pretty badass match and a great debut for RVD.
Yeah, this is a super influential match, I feel like, and it really, in a time where wrestling match quality wasn't really so much of a big deal and like big spot fests were kind of getting phased out, this match was special. Like, it felt super special. This would get completely overshadowed. They would have a ladder match like a week later that was like 10 times better than this. But it was just in this moment, like, especially on a super boring show that kind of sucks, this match happens and you're like, what the fuck did I just see? That was amazing.
If you went on an internet wrestling forum the night of this show, you would have had about 1,000 Smart Mark nerds jerking off to this match.
Yeah. If there was a Twitter during this show, like, this would have been where it exploded.
Yeah, would have broken Twitter.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Vince tries to fire up Angle, talking about the flag, the country, all that. Kurt says he's had enough Americana bullshit. He's here to kick some ass tonight, and the crowd erupts.
God, they wanted Kurt to be faced so bad.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, they had led up to this by, like, with a whole lot of comedy Kurt, right?
Yeah. Hilarious comedy Kurt.
I think the fans were ready to cheer him, and by, like, dropping that and making him, like, serious warrior Kurt Angle, like, they really tapped into the right thing here.
Yeah, and they've had bits and pieces of Kurt the Badass, because he started, like, breaking dudes' ankles with the ankle lock, and he had all those matches with Benoit, the insane cage match on Raw. He had that crazy street fight with Shane McMahon at King of the Ring. Like, they've been building to this badass Kurt Angle for months now.
Yeah, and like, so this is great.
Next up, we've got the Bra and Panties tag team match. It's Trish Stratus and Lita against Stacy Keibler and Tori Wilson. You win by stripping both of your opponents. Pervo Mick Foley is the referee.
Perfect cash in by Mick Foley to be for the referee of the Bra and Panties match. Now, let me say this, because I know I'm like kind of like the staunch feminist, like, on a lot of these issues. This match obviously has aged horrifically. That goes without saying. But if I'm being fair, these kind of matches were a big part of the shows at this point. So, like, if you're going with dream matches, it's arguable that this is the kind of match that you would put on, right?
Yeah. 2 hot WWF women against 2 hot WCW women.
And arguably the top women of both. And you're going to put them in here. Like, it's not like Stacy and Tori are going to have a match.
No.
Like,
Stacy Keibler wrestling is so awkward. Her legs are just like 15 feet long.
She has no
It's like
idea.
a giraffe on roller skates.
She moves like Great Khali.
Yeah.
Oh my God. But like this, so like it actually makes sense for this to be on this card. I wish that it wasn't. I wish this was a time in wrestling that it never existed. But it is what it is. And honestly, this could have been a lot worse.
No, this isn't terrible. Trish was really improving here. Like, you're already starting to see how good Trish is getting.
Right. It almost it really feels like Trish is already above this. But like she's doing it. But at this point, like, she's already kind of moving past all of this.
Yeah. And Lita's Lita. Moonsaults, awesome stuff.
My favorite thing about Lita is just like, this is a Bra and Panties match, and they were like, we're going to humiliate you, Lita. Yeah. Lita's panties are already out. They always are.
Yeah. Not a bad match. The face women win, and then they kind of walk out. Trish and Lita walk out in their buddy after they've been rivals for a long time. I don't feel like that led to much of anything.
I think the idea was that they wanted to incorporate Trish into that act, or at least into the...
Her and Jeff were starting to have a thing at this point. So it was going to be her and Jeff and Lita and Matt, but
Well, the problem was that Jeff wasn't comfortable with it. Like, Jeff wasn't comfortable doing the romance angle.
Jeff Hardy emoting is not something we want to see.
Which is funny, because this is one of like 6 people who they try to put Trish with who are like, I'm not super comfortable with this. Because really, if you had to go home and tell your wife, like, I'm banging Trish Stratus on TV today, that might be a problem.
Yep. They definitely did it with Rocky, and it definitely didn't work out.
Exactly.
We get the final speech from Shane and Stephanie and Heyman. They put over how this is redemption. This is our chance to be winners instead of losers. This is our last chance. It's all on the line here. Vince goes to talk to Austin. Austin cuts him off. He says he doesn't need motivation. He's not here to sing or play the guitar or hug somebody. He's here to whip somebody's ass. Just like all the stench of the heel turn is gone at this point.
Yeah, we were all ready to forgive that heel turn and just be like, oh, all is forgiven.
Wipe that slate clean. We don't care that he bloodied Jim Ross. We don't care that he beat Lita with a chair. We're all in on this.
All right. Now take a deep breath because this is a long match.
I had a birthday watching this match. So, yeah, it's the inaugural brawl. Why is this called the inaugural brawl?
Okay, here's my theory, okay? I think that this was originally meant to be the first of multiple, of like a yearly thing between WWE and WCW, much the same way that Raw versus SmackDown at Survivor Series became a thing. I think originally they were going to split the shows and have this be where they fight. And like that's why they called it the inaugural brawl, because this is the first one.
Could be. I mean, I assumed it was going to open the show because that's what inaugural means. But obviously, once you saw the rest of the card, it was apparent this had to be the main event because there was not shit on the rest of the show.
They should have put the refs in the main event.
So, do we agree that this is really bad matchmaking to do a 5-on-5 match here? Like, they don't have the talent to have 10 guys in the main event. This just destroys the rest of the card.
You're absolutely right. However, I would argue they don't have a main event otherwise.
No, because, Austin and Booker, I guess.
But Booker's still kind of a face.
Yeah. But, I mean, it's just like, is Booker really big enough? Does he have enough stature to be in there with Austin at this point?
I really don't think so.
Maybe if you've turned Jericho already, Jericho.
See,
and
that's
Austin,
the thing.
Jericho. Does Jericho in the ring with Austin at this point feel big time?
No, I think it would have taken a lot longer to build to it. There's really no match unless you've got like a Goldberg or a Hogan or somebody.
And if I had Goldberg, I would have debuted him here, spearing Austin and costing him the match.
Exactly.
To set up Goldberg and Austin for SummerSlam.
So I think the multi-man does make sense. It doesn't make sense that it's not like an elimination match. Like they just do a better version of this at Survivor Series, but it's like the same match. And it's like, why don't...
Except by Survivor Series, there's no WCW people in there, except Booker.
But it's still a better match because making it elimination just makes it a better match.
That's a long-ass match. That match goes like an hour.
Which it should, because it's, at least kayfabe-wise, the most important match in wrestling history.
Yeah. So it's 5-5 coming in. The winner takes all. They don't actually win anything, but they win.
Right. I do like. Yeah, I was going to say I do like that they bring all of the people out. Yeah. Like they make it feel like a big deal.
Shane comes out, then Heyman and Stephanie come out. Vince comes out next. He gets a gigantic pop. Like, it just makes me think. Can you imagine how hot a match between him and Bischoff here would have been?
Oh God! If you like replace the refs match with Vince versus Bischoff,
my God. And they could have like worked a real match.
I'm absolutely sure that they could have.
Yeah, it's crazy to me that there was never a proper Vince versus Bischoff match. But I think the secret is Vince felt like it would be lowering himself to wrestle Bischoff because his actual rival was Ted Turner.
Yeah, that's understandable. The idea of like Vince versus Bischoff with Heyman as the ref or something.
So they've been teasing, I mean, as we mentioned, they've been teasing Jericho defecting to WCW. This match probably should have ended with him turning on the WWF instead of what they did.
Yeah, I would do everything exactly the same, except at the end of this, it's Jericho who betrays the team.
Yeah, I think that would have made a lot more sense.
Absolutely.
They alternate entrances, so the Dudleys come out first, then Taker and Kane, then Rhino, then Jericho, then Booker, then Kurt do a huge pop, then DDP, and then Austin to the pop of the night.
God, Austin gets. It's like we're right back in like 1998.
Yeah,
like it's that level pop.
Liquid hot.
Yeah.
Like we said, no eliminations. It's one fall to a finish. Just an all-out brawl to start. People are fighting in the ring. They're fighting on the floor. Crowd's going crazy for this. The match finally starts. We get a long series of showcases where everybody gets to get in and kind of do their stuff. The advantage keeps turning with each tag. Then we get the tag to Austin, and he just comes in on fire. He beats down Booker T. Crowd is wild for him.
God, he's just so good. And it's like you missed that Austin so bad because he'd been doing a lot of actually really great work in his matches.
The match he had with Benoit on SmackDown.
Incredible.
Oh, I love
the
that
best match in SmackDown history is for my money. Like,
I bet it is.
Austin had really just been channeling like WCW Austin, where he was just like the worker and he was just doing all this great heelish shit. And like, if it weren't for the fact that it was desperately not what we wanted, it would have been a heel run that we would fondly remember to this day.
If Austin had had a longer career and had turned heel a couple years after this, it would have been great. But it was way too soon to turn him. He had just come back from the neck injury. He was hotter than ever.
Exactly.
Jericho tags in. He gets DDP in the walls of Jericho, but Booker breaks it. Jericho goes for the lion salt. He misses, but he lands on his feet. He gets hot-shotted by Booker. Then there's heat on Jericho. He gets the hot tag to Kurt. Kurt suplexes everybody, but he gets cut off and worked over. Booker hits the axe kick. Taker breaks up the pin. DDP gets in. He hits a spiral bomb on Angle. Austin breaks up the pin. Austin is just pacing the apron like a caged animal here.
That's a great visual because like everybody's into it, but Austin's just like
madman,
foaming at the mouth.
Yeah, just building the anticipation for that hot tag. DDP hits a Cobra Clutch Slam. Hot tag to Austin, but the ref didn't see it. Huge brawl breaks out. Rhino accidentally gores Booker T. Taker beats up DDP, choke slams him. Undertaker attacks Charles Robinson, the referee, knocks him out, hits him with the last ride. Taker and DDP fight out into the crowd, and they're both gone. They are not seen again here. Austin is down on the floor holding his knee. We don't see how he hurt it. Kane chokeslams Devon through the announce table. Bubba and Rhino double suplex Kane through the other announce table. Jericho hits Rhino with a flying forearm that sends them both through a table. So we're down to Booker and Angle. Bubba gets in the ring, but Angle takes him out. Angle slam on Bubba. Ankle lock on Booker. Booker slips out. Ref gets bumped.
And this is great, by the way, because Angle is just taking out everybody, and he's looking like the badass who's going to win it for him.
Yep. Vince gets in the ring. Shane hits him with the WWF title belt. Angle knocks out Shane and Bubba. He hits the Angle slam on Booker, gets him back in the ankle lock. Booker's tapping, but there's no ref. Austin returns. He throws the referee into the ring, and then he hits Angle with the stunner. Throws Booker on top. Booker gets the pin. All the air comes out of this storyline. Austin's turned heel again. I mean, there's heat on him. I don't think it's the kind of heat that made people want to stick around and watch, though. People wanted to see the old Stone Cold.
And see, here's the thing. There's a difference.
That's what sold this show.
There's heat, and then there's disappointment. Like, the fans weren't mad at what they got, or they weren't mad at Austin for turning again. They felt betrayed because they thought they were getting something and they didn't get it.
Yeah. And going into this match, I was expecting Austin to turn. I just assumed it was going to be a swerve, and I was just desperately hoping they didn't go through with it.
And that's why I think that if it had been Jericho, the heat would have been nuclear. Because then it's like you screwed over Austin. Like, we finally got Austin. We finally thought we were going to get what we wanted. But then a guy that we liked is a fucking shithead. Let's boo the shit out of him.
Yeah. And yeah, if this show ends with like Jericho celebrating with Shane and Stephanie and Heyman, I think people are throwing garbage at the ring.
Exactly. And that's exactly what you want. That's what they tried to accomplish at Vengeance. And that's what they tried to accomplish here with Austin. If you just combine the two and do it the proper way, this is exactly what should have happened. But it's not meant to be, I guess.
Yeah, so the Alliance wins the night. The storyline, like, it just gets colder and colder every week after this, to the point where by the end of it, when they blow it off at Survivor Series, like that Survivor Series not only doesn't do good business compared to what you would expect the blow off to the Invasion to do, it doesn't really even do a good buy rate for just a regular Survivor Series.
I'll go you one further. It not only does it kill the business for the rest of this storyline, this kills WWE's business from this point on.
Forever.
Yes, this is the end of the Attitude Era, the true official end of the mainstream wrestling boom. At this moment, whether it was the shitty show, whether it was the disappointment of not getting the dream card they thought they were going to get, or whether it was just the total bait and switch of Steve Austin, which I think had a much bigger part in this than people realize.
They felt betrayed. Yeah, they put their money down. You know, people who had stopped watching put their money down to see Austin again, and they stabbed him in the back again.
This is every bit as bad as the finger poke of doom or whatever WCW nonsense you want to point to. Yeah. This was a full-on betrayal of fan trust. It was looking at what they wanted, saying, haha, fuck you, you don't get that. And like so many people just flat stopped watching wrestling. Yeah. Not just WWE, not just WCW, not just changing the channel. They tuned
to watch.
Yeah, they tuned out.
Yeah,
and they never came back anymore. Like they lose millions of fans over the next year. And then they never get them back. They still don't have them back.
No.
It's never come back.
It's so strange that Vince McMahon was always the give the people what they want booker. And it was a philosophy that served him so well over the years. And he wouldn't just give them Stone Cold Steve Austin when that was all they wanted. Didn't matter what the rest of the show was. They got their Austin, they were happy.
And I think the biggest part of it is that that's not what Steve wanted.
Yeah.
Steve wanted to be a heel. And he's his top star and he's got to make him happy. And he was already unhappy. We know that. But you got to say no, because it's just imagine the difference in business for the next 6 months if Austin's a babyface. Yeah. A liquid hot babyface going against Jericho. Or even don't take our idea. Do it with anybody else. Turn Angle. I don't give a fuck. Don't squander Stone Cold Steve Austin this way.
So bad.
They must have thought that they could just turn him again down the road and it would be fine.
That's the thing, is I have no idea what the long-term plan is. I don't think they have one.
Yeah. And like we said,
looking ahead, they've just done this all by the seat of their pants. Like, they weren't planning to turn him back face. They just did. I mean, they weren't planning to bring in ECW. They weren't planning. They weren't planning any of this. They're just panicking week by week when the low ratings come in.
Yeah. And see, that's the thing, is that we're trying to establish some sort of timeline, some sort of narrative to all of this that makes it make sense. But that's not how they were doing it at the time. This was a disaster, a mess. And they completely lost control of it, became paralyzed by indecision of what to do to fix it, and did gigantic amounts of damage to their long-term booking, their long-term business, to wrestling as an industry. By not having control of this situation, by trying to do the biggest storyline of all time and failing, they hurt the business. I don't think you can argue that.
No, their business just sinks like a stone over the course of the next year or two. I mean, they don't really get an upswing until like 2005 with Cena and Batista.
Yeah. And I mean, and then
and it's not that big an upswing either.
Yeah.
Like the boom, quote unquote, that they get from that is nowhere near, the previous couple booms.
And weirdly, WrestleMania, like climbs to like even higher numbers, and it becomes like this weird once a year people actually tune in and watch thing.
Yeah, that's what WrestleMania is now. It's the show, the one time a year that all the casual fans come back to watch.
To the extent that WWE doesn't even bother booking interesting storylines.
Rest of the year doesn't matter.
Yeah, they literally treat it that way. The rest of the year is just training for WrestleMania.
Unless they have a Saudi Arabia show, then that matters because they're getting a giant check from the Saudi government, but otherwise nothing matters.
Jesus Christ.
Oh, okay. We have done our longest show ever, but I think it was absolutely worth it. This was a fascinating ride. It was an absolutely abysmal show, a business success for the short term, but an absolute failure in the long run.
Absolutely. I am so glad that we finally got to vent all of our frustration about this show. If you think that we seemed angry about it, believe me, this is the most cordial we've ever been in talking about this time in wrestling. It's very personal to us because literally like the lines just frayed out into the future immediately from this show on. It'll never sit right with me. All the different paths this could have taken in we're in the worst timeline. Do you understand?
Yeah.
Of all the things,
the 14 million paths that they could have chosen here, this is the one they settled on.
We're in the darkest one. Ganon won. The Ocarina of Time is destroyed. Link is dead. It's over.
Thanos killed all the stars.
That's true. They're all gone, faded away like dust in the wind. Oh, sorry about those spoilers, guys.
By the time this actually airs, everybody will have seen it.
God, I hope so. If you haven't, get on that shit, man. That movie's great.
Oh, so that wraps us for Invasion. I'm sure we'll get around to covering some of the other shows from this time. We'll definitely do that SummerSlam sometime. We'll definitely do the Survivor Series. But, I mean, you know what happens after this. It's nothing good. This show was bad, and it only goes downhill from here.
Yep, unfortunately so.
Yeah. So we are through the Invasion. Next week, I felt like it was time that we check back in with WCW 1998. So we're going to cover Spring Stampede 1998, and I feel like we might do another hour at the top of the show just talking about all the crazy shit that happened in WCW in those couple months.
Oh, God, yes. It's going to be so much fun.
Yeah. Sting is finally actually the champion, kind of, sort of, but not for long. Bret Hart's in WCW, and he's floundering. Ric Flair's been fired. The NWO is breaking up. The Wolfpack is forming. All sorts of other crazy, insane, great things are happening in WCW. So we'll be back with that for you next week.